I think what we have here in Hollywood is high art. It's...
Party time! Sparkle time! If you could go anywhere in the whole world, where would you go?
I always wanted to be part of something bigger.
Yeah.
Something that lasts, that means something.
You know, when I first moved to LA,
Have your face touch you to
you know what the signs on all the doors read? No actors or dogs allowed. I changed that.
Where do you say we come in for my close-up now?
Hello, welcome to Double Feature. Wow, that was a big audio spike, wasn't it?
Yeah, not bad.
My name is Mason,
I'm Matt.
and we are here to talk about Babylon, the low-budget, $80 million art house movie that is somehow completely failing to take the country by storm. Even though there has actually been a storm this week, it has not come from this movie. Babylon stars Brad Pitt as Jack Conrad, stars Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, as, what was her character's name? It wasn't Lena Lamont.
I'm gonna
Nellie Leroy.
Nellie Leroy, good call.
Nellie Leroy. Diego Calva as Manny.
Yes, Manny Torres.
Manny Torres.
As well as many other people. Olivia Wilde in one scene as Ina Conrad.
How did I miss Olivia Wilde?
I noticed her and then she never came back in the movie, although I guess that's a spoiler. But this is a new movie, so maybe we'll try to keep the spoilers low.
Oh, there's no way we can not keep... We have to talk about this movie.
Okay.
All of this movie.
Okay, yeah, but she was in one scene, and then Jean Smart has a sizable role in the movie as
an old Hollywood era gossip columnist. Golden Hollywood gossip columnist.
Not Hedda Hopper, but Eleanor St. John. And who are some other... Briefly, you get Tobey Maguire in a couple of big scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Jeff Garlin was in there. Jovan Adepo, who I was not familiar with, is one of the leads.
Yeah, he was
the
the jazz trumpeter. What was his name?
Flea.
Flea?
Flea was in a lot of the movie.
Okay.
As the Bob Levine, the guy who... The very skinny middle-aged man.
Yep. Okay. And...
who I'm not sure what his job was.
I'm not sure what his job... I'm not sure he knows what his job was.
I thought at first that it was his party for a second. Then it wasn't. It was Jeff Garland's party at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we should say the idea of this show is that every episode we will talk about a movie, but then we will each have selected a movie to pair it with for a double feature.
Right.
And then we will argue about which was the better choice. And so let's talk, I guess, about Babylon.
Let's talk about Babylon.
It starts off with trying to wrangle an elephant to a party from, I guess, somewhere out in the valley or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe out near Palm... I wasn't sure exactly where we were at in the beginning of the movie.
I think that was supposed to be
John Huston's
Xanadu.
house.
What was the name of William Randolph Hearst's castle?
Oh, the real castle?
Was it Hearst Castle?
It's Hearst Castle.
Yeah, I think that's where we were supposed to be.
But we were out like in the desert or something.
Yes.
Okay, and which I guess is where Hearst Castle's kind of out there, right? Trying to get an elephant in the back of a horse trailer and cart it to a party at a movie producer named not Jack Warner, or but
Mr. Wallach.
Mr. Wallach, yeah.
Not Eli Wallach.
No. And Mr. Wallach is, we will find out later, Jeff Garlin. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, do we ever even see him at his own party, or did we not?
I'm not sure we do. We see him a couple points in the movie. I don't remember him at the party, but to be fair, no one would have noticed him at that party. People barely noticed the elephant at that party.
And I think maybe his absence from his own party was, well, I don't think maybe, I'm sure it was by design.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in this movie that are by design that you can only realize later as the movie progresses that were by design, which is a weird thing about the movie seeing it the first time, because sometimes you go a long time and wonder what was the point of that. Then later on you're like, oh, I see what they were doing there.
Now I get it.
Yeah.
This is the story of... This is the transition from Hollywood, the silent years, to Hollywood, the sound years. I think it starts in 1926 and ends... Well, the main part of the movie ends in 1932, 33, and then we cut forward to the 50s for our last little bit. But this is another Singin' in the Rain style transition between... silent and sound.
Yes, and it's a 3-hour, very ambitious movie. Not meditative, but in the mode of the recent Paul Thomas Anderson movies, but more in the mode of Boogie Nights, or definitely a Martin Scorsese movie, or Michael Mann or something. But less, you don't feel Michael Mann as an influence in the movie, or at least I didn't. But just in that kind of, it's an assault. The movie is an assault on your senses.
Yes.
With lots going on.
Yeah. You have no room to breathe. Almost no room to breathe.
Almost no room to breathe.
There are these few moments spaced like maybe 10, 15 minutes apart where you cut away from the jazz age, from all the craziness, into a quiet room where something is going on, or the characters just like take a moment. A ton of characters are watching a few characters do one thing, and those are the only breathing spaces you have in 3 hours. It's exhausting.
Back to this elephant at the beginning. Diego Calva's character, Manny Torres, is I guess a procurer of sorts. Mm-hmm. Yes man kind of henchman character who works for Wallach.
Yes, Manuel's job is to do anything.
Yes.
Anything and everything. He is Manuel labor.
Yeah. Yeah, and so he's trying to get this elephant to this party, and we get a crazy shot of them pushing the elephant from behind up a hill and the elephant's anus defecating all over the characters. Do you remember this?
I do. That was about when I realized why the Disney company wasn't a co-producer on this film.
Yeah, and it was very crazy. Not pleasurable to me. So they go from this to we get all of our central characters. Although, were the jazz musicians at the party playing?
They were.
Okay, that's right.
Sidney Palmer, was that his name?
Yes.
Yeah, he was there basically in set piece 1 at the party.
That's right. So all of our major characters arrive at this party at the Wallach Mansion. Mm-hmm. That is a huge bacchanalia and huge set piece. It's our first major sequence of the film.
Yes.
After the elephant, and the way the characters arrive, we get silent movie big star Brad Pitt as Jack Conrad arriving with his wife Olivia Wilde and they fight, and she wants to file for divorce from him. And we have a running gag wherein he speaks foreign languages, and he speaks
Italian at the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Which annoys her to the point of her saying she wants a divorce. And we also meet a current actor, Asian woman.
Yes.
What was her name?
I don't remember the actress's name off the top of my head. It was Lady Faye was the character in the movie. Lady Faye, Lee Jun-Lee.
Lee Jun-Lee. But she's having a hard time getting roles. Okay, so I guess it's a good time to bring up the title of the movie. It's Babylon, and it's a reference to the Kenneth Anger Hollywood Babylon books, which were a compendium, encyclopedia kind of thing of various bad tales of old Hollywood debauchery.
Yeah.
Probably, at least in the first volume, the two that stick in my mind the most, I only read the first volume, were, of course, the Fatty Arbuckle story and the Mary Provost story, which we never get the Mary Provost story in this movie, but at this party we get the Fatty
Arbuckle story. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with
prejudice.
Golden showers.
Yeah.
And Fatty Arbuckle's penis. And this is a movie that really delights in gross out humor. For as ambitious as it is with other things, we get many examples of gross out humor.
I mean, it's not...
Or is it humor?
It is humor. It's meant to be funny. I found it a little off-putting, or a lot off-putting.
I did too.
Honest. But it's not, it's an $80 million movie. It's not like Avatar 2. It's not Avengers Endgame. It's not on that budgetary level, but still, $80 million is a huge chunk of change.
I honestly thought it might have cost more than $80 million.
Yeah, to spend on a movie that spends like the first 15 or 20 minutes of the movie trying to make you feel aggressively uncomfortable.
Yeah, this is a crazy thing about the movie, is that most of these movies, because what I was going to say about you don't realize things until later in the film, is that this party is in a major way supposed to be indicative of the good old days. Mm-hmm. Later on, people lament that it's no longer like it was when this party happened, but the film has almost a reverse of what happens in like a Martin Scorsese movie, wherein you get allured by the trappings of the rise of these characters, and it's intoxicating, and you're like, oh yeah, being in the mob would be pretty cool. Oh yeah, being a scam stockbroker and driving a Lamborghini would be pretty cool. And then it gets out of control. And the out of control part is disgusting.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be within 100 miles of this party.
No, there's tons of drugs. What seems almost like too many drugs, but I don't know the reality of those times.
They have a separate room in the basement just for all the drugs, for the cocaine, for the heroin.
Scarface levels of cocaine.
Yes. I mean, all of them neatly sorted, too, to the point where you can just point and say, that's the coke, that's the heroin, what do you want?
And tons of nudity in this sequence. It's like the Eyes Wide Shut party, but with more male genitalia.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good description of it, actually.
And then you get our first, from the director of La La Land, song in the movie is about, like...
female genitalia.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it female genitalia.
Did you like this song and dance number?
I really liked the first 3 lines of it. And then we got to the hook.
Yeah.
And no.
No, me neither. At this point, I thought the movie was going to be terrible.
This party, though, is a great way to set up all of the characters and all of the different angles of old Hollywood. You have your classic silent era male star, your Douglas Fairbanks type, in Brad Pitt, who arrives at the party on the top of his game as the biggest name in town, as the biggest face on the biggest marquee in Hollywood. You have Margot Robbie showing up out of nowhere in somebody else's car, crashing into a statue and blaming other people for the statue being there, but it's okay because it's not her car. She arrives as literally as a nobody, but already convinced that she is going to be a star.
And already, perhaps atypical of the rise and fall story, already out of control on drugs and things.
Yeah, literally from minute 1 that we see her. She arrives at the party. A little, yeah.
And then she wants drugs when she gets into the party, which she's not going to be allowed into the party, but Diego Calva sees her outside and is immediately taken with her and talks her into the party. He's basically like, she's with me, more or less, and gets her in. Then he takes her to that room of drugs. And then one of the scenes of the movie that was kind of realistic and somewhat amusing, probably my favorite thing at the party is that just she gets trapped down there in this room doing lines for a long time instead of actually going to the party, which is what would actually probably happen to someone. There's always an excuse to wait another minute and do one more line.
Yeah. So you have the white man, you have the white woman, and then you have our 3 main ethnic characters, for lack of a better word. You have Manny, whose whole role has been to set up the party and make sure that everything goes right. That's his job, and he will do. He's the ultimate fix-it man.
And then
he's the handy Manny.
Really, the ultimate fix-it man is Flea, who is the Manny, and he's like bossing Manny around. And when the hooker, or I guess she may be a hooker, but she's also an actress that is urinating on Fatty Arbuckle, dies, that Flea marshals and supervises getting rid of her body and recasting her role in a movie the next day. My
gosh, and out of all of the people at the party, who does he pick? Who does he pick, Matt?
The no longer in that room, Margot Robbie, who is now dancing around at the party while people have doggy-style sex right and left.
And he literally considers several different people before he looks over at her and sees her on the tabletop, and he's like, that girl. Yes. Get that girl to set tomorrow.
Which moves us into, I think, well, you know who else we meet at the party? We do meet one more character outside, I think, is Lucas Hawes.
That's right.
Is Lucas Hawes put on weight, or did he just, or is he in like some kind of makeup?
Oh, I sincerely hope if he did put on weight, he just did it for the movie.
Yeah, because I used to see Lucas Haas running around the Hollywood, West Hollywood area many times, and he was a lithe gentleman for sure. He's a very tiny man. But yeah, he definitely looked nothing like he does in this movie, to the extent that I knew Lucas Haas was in the movie, and it took me a minute to realize that was Lucas Haas, which is one of the few movies I've seen him in recent years that isn't where it's like he's with his buddy Leo, which I guess the only other movie I've seen him in recent years was The Revenant.
Oh, yeah.
But he plays a hapless with women movie producer and friend, very good friend and producer with the Douglas Fairbanks character, Brad Pitt.
Yes.
We go from that to the next day at the studio. No. First, I guess, we go to the morning after. The people leaving the party.
The people leaving the party, and in many cases going to work for what I can only assume is at least a mid-morning call.
Yeah, it has to be, because I guess the first pleasurable thing in the movie really was Margot Robbie stepping out into that beautiful dawn, and just the way it looked was gorgeous. Manny gets the job of driving drunken Brad Pitt to drunken Brad Pitt's palatial estate. We get our first real good example of Brad Pitting out, where he just gives his first big speech about how movies are good. He's the big proponent of movies as art in the film.
Over and over again, he is convinced that movies can be, they're a young art, he says. They're a young art, they're a new art, but he thinks they can be a high art.
And maybe because of this, about his character's optimism and genuine caring about the form and his job, and maybe because it's Brad Pitt, I found him by far the most interesting and involving character in the movie.
Certainly in the first part of it. I would say throughout, but of course he leaves the movie a little early.
Yeah, I would definitely say throughout. To me, he was the heart of the movie. I never worked up much caring for Margot Robbie's character, and
it's hard to.
And which I thought maybe makes this kind of a trilogy of movies where I didn't care about her character enough, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as Sharon Tate.
Ooh, well, we're gonna have to talk about that later.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is another movie Brad Pitt steals like that one too. And then what's the other big one she was in recently? Oh, Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Where her character's a real weakling.
Did you see Amsterdam?
We went and saw Amsterdam.
We did?
Yes.
Did we do this together?
Yes.
Do I remember that? A lot of really great scenes that didn't build them much.
No,
that's Amsterdam.
Yeah, this movie in a weird way was kind of like Amsterdam. What we'll get to is that we're in a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing. Whereas Amsterdam, I would give a mild thumbs down, maybe, or a thumbs sideways. I liked this movie.
Yeah, I think it's fair. We're going to end up on pretty much the same place here.
Yeah, in fact, I maybe really liked this movie.
Then we're really going to end up in the same place here.
But it took so long for me to like the movie that I thought it was going to be just a disastrously terrible movie. Because not only did I not like that party, I didn't like the part at Brad Pitt's house. I didn't like Margot Robbie going home. And I didn't like this next part where they go to the set and that we have the Spike Jonze as the director of the Brad Pitt movie, which is a sword and sandal epic, I think, and they're shooting a massive action scene which looks like it cost a lot of the money of the budget of the film and has many intended laughs, but I didn't like it at all.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on this one. Once we got to the lot and they actually started it started to put the party into context, and I started to appreciate the party a little bit more after that. I mean, it's like, if this is what your day is like, if you spend all day improvising and it's basically trying to make up a movie on the spot. That's one of the things I appreciated about them depicting that about old Hollywood, where it's not, we're working from a set script and the director is absolutely in charge. No, we'll take input from this guy, we'll take input from this guy, we'll take input from Margot Robbie on her first frickin' day on the set. She's basically improvising her own part part to a large degree.
In a different movie that we intercut.
That's
with.
true. It's
a Western, it seems like. Western directed by a woman who is quite good in the movie. Mm-hmm. Who is this lady?
I don't remember. Olivia Hamilton is the actress's name.
What do we know her from? She seemed incredibly familiar.
I have no idea.
She looked really, really familiar to me. Oh, is this also the part of the film where... Have we gone to Chinatown in LA yet? And seen where, like, Lady Faye lives with her parents? And
I think we did see that. Yeah, and that kind of... They're going back to their lives after the party.
Yeah, and so she's kind of an out-of-work actor, but what her job is, we don't find that out here, is that she writes titles. She writes the intercut dialogue and explanation title cards in silent movies as work when she can't get acting work, but she's enough of a presence in the movie that her signed glamour photos, autographed, make money for her family.
Yes.
So she had some kind of success as an actor. Yeah.
The director on Margot Robbie's first movie is played by Olivia Hamilton, who had a bit part in La La Land. She was in First Man. Yeah. And apparently she is Mrs. Damien Chazelle.
Ah. And apparently she also appeared in the TV series of The Last Tycoon.
Okay.
Which I haven't seen, but I did think about making the movie The Last Tycoon, the double feature of this movie. It is not what I ultimately selected. I'll explain why.
Sure.
But it's another movie about old Hollywood and features... The entire movie is about a fictionalized version of Irving Thalberg, who is a character in this film. In fact, perhaps our only real character, because they never refer to Fatty Arbuckle by name.
No, I'm sure there was, although we never hear her, Gloria Swanson is name checked. Brad Pitt is on the phone with her.
And Buster Keaton.
At one point, yeah. And so I know that the company that they work for, that Brad Pitt works for, that Manny ends up running, like, it's not Paramount.
It's Kinescope.
But it's very clearly Paramount. Because who else would Gloria Swanson be working for?
Let me ask you this, because Paramount also produced the film, and we're going to get to this, that the movie has many similarities you've already mentioned, actually, to Singin' in the Rain, wherein they worked for Monument Pictures.
It's Monumental Pictures.
And so wouldn't that maybe have been a good name for the studio in this movie as well?
Yeah, I can see that, but I get the whole idea of making it Kinescope, you know.
Yeah,
Kinescope
Kinescope was a cool name too. I didn't have a problem with that. I honestly had not seen Singin' in the Rain, so this only occurred to me later. But Irving Thalberg is, I think, the only real person we see by name in the movie. We heard Garbo was going to be at the party.
Never saw Garbo.
No, I don't know that she was ever actually going to be there.
Yeah, I think that was just Margot Robbie. Yeah,
I think that was Diego Calva making up a line.
Oh, that was Calva. That's right. You're right.
Tell this cop who was going to be at this party. Well, maybe he wasn't lying. I don't know. Yeah, but at any rate, we're to the next day now, and Margot Robbie has her first day on the set. She's replaced this dead woman, which I think is another funny thing about the good old days, is that Margot Robbie's start is actually just replacing a dead hooker in this movie. And what did you think of this? What happens here is that they keep demanding thing after thing of Olivia Wilde, who has no experience. Not Olivia Wilde, but Margot Robbie, who has no experience. And she not only is able to do everything they ask her, cry on cue, blah blah blah, she's improvises the ideas, and we get a very Scorsese's bravura scene of editing together her day of work on the set. Did you enjoy this?
I did. I did not. You did not. Why did you not?
I don't know. To me, this whole part was laughs that didn't work out. I think the only thing that made me laugh here was that after his whole day in the trailer pontificating and rewriting the screenplay about how great he was going to be, Jack Conrad, old Brad Pitt's also drinking, and by the time they get to his scene, he's hammered. The other guys that were in there working with him are passed out drunk, and that was the only part of that I liked.
But I did like it. It gave a little heft, and I can't say that I made the connection at the time. I only made it in the aftermath. But it gave a little heft to Margot Robbie's frankly Texas-sized ego. That I can show up and be the star. on day one. And she can. She actually can pull it off. She's got a giant opinion of herself, but she's actually got the talent and the ability, at least enough to back up some of that.
It ends up with, we meet the actual star of the movie, who's another actress, who I can't think of her name.
Yeah, the actress was Constance Moore, and I recognized
She's another person I recognized her face.
Immediately.
Yes.
And I found out later it was Samara Weaving. I've seen her in, she was in 3 Billboards.
Oh, yes.
She was in...
I don't remember.
She's been in several things that I've seen, and she's always, like, that face. She's immediately noticeable whenever she pops up.
But she steals the director and crew's attention in getting directed from Weaving. Mm-hmm. And we also meet the first AD of the movie Margot Robbie's working on, who I don't know the actor's name. He's the guy that played Pinhead in Wolf of Wall Street, which with Margot Robbie now is at least 2 of the cast of Wolf of Wall Street who we will meet in this movie, which is definitely, as I said, influenced by the Scorsese pictures, but it's very influenced by Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, that was P.J. Byrne.
P.J. Byrne. He was one of my favorite people in the movie, honestly.
Yeah, P.J. Byrne. Or, as I knew him first, the most engaging character on Legend of Korra.
What is Legend of Korra?
Have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
No.
Okay, it's the best kid show ever made. Legend of Korra is the underwhelming follow-up to it, and P.J. Byrne is the best, most engaging character.
So it's
on
live
that
action?
Show. No, it's all cartoon. He's a voice.
Oh.
Yeah. But I saw his name in the credits so many times, the end of every episode is like, oh, boom, boom, boom. Anyway.
Yeah, he was good in Wolf of Wall Street, and I'm sure I've seen him between then and now, but he was quite good in this as the first AD, and which we'll get to. But at any rate, so it's like, yeah, she immediately has this star-making day, but we also get a major problem. Spike Jonze, who's doing some kind of foreign accent as the...
He's German. He's meant to be German, I think.
And so it's like is he like von Sternberg, or who's not von Sternberg, but who is Mr. Gloria Swanson?
Oh, it's von Stroheim, Eric von Stroheim.
Eric von Stroheim. Yes, and he runs out of his camera breaks. He needs the right camera.
No, it's not just that his camera breaks. It's that he's got 20 cameras and they're all broken because he sent them into this crazy battle sequence. And all of the extras have, one by one, destroyed all of these cameras, and now you just need one camera to get the big kiss, the climactic kiss, the Brad Pitt kiss. And he doesn't have it. So who do you turn to?
You send Manny.
You send Manny. He is the handy Manny.
Yes.
You send him to fix it.
Who I guess Brad Pitt latched onto when he drove him home and brought him to the set. So Manny's getting into pictures by being now Brad Pitt's yes man and fixer. And yeah, so they send Manny, and this is where the movie took off to me. Mm-hmm. I loved this part. This was because what they do is they send him to Hollywood proper to a rental house of camera equipment and to rent this camera, and immediately you have this very Coen Brothers scene where he encounters the guy working at the camera rental place, and he needs to know which kind of camera he needs. And
do you need a 2608 or a 2609? Is there a difference? Hey Joe, the guy wants to know if there's a difference between it. Classic.
He doesn't know, but neither of the cameras are in anyway. But one is to be returned in 30 minutes. This is some heavy spoiler territory. I feel bad ruining these jokes for people that haven't seen the movie, which is
everybody
has. Yeah, you're the only person I know that's seen it. He has to wait for this camera to be returned because it turns out one's supposed to be back in 30 minutes. Anyone who's tried to make a movie knows nothing ever runs on time. It's a very hurry up and wait job, and people are always pushing to the last second. And if somebody tells you they're returning something at 3 p.m., you're lucky if they leave their place with it at 5 p.m.
Yep.
And it ends up just all of these extras, everybody's waiting, everything's waiting at this on this movie lot, and Manny's just stuck in this rental house waiting and waiting. And I thought this was a brilliant scene that is, obviously the film is made by people who make films, but there was so much knowing about the practice of making movies in this sequence that I was just really taken with it and thought it was so effective and funny. I thought it was brilliant. And then another spoiler where they cut back to Spike Jonze apologizing to God for wasting the light of the beautiful day he gave him. But of course Manny shows up.
Over the hill, having stolen or hijacked or paid off an ambulance to race him back to the set before magic hour is over with the camera, which he takes without worrying about signing it out and going through their whole ridiculous sign-out procedure. And they get there on the top of the hill and call action, and Brad Pitt comes in, and there's the big kiss with all the extras running around in the background, and you see explosions, and all of a sudden you're thinking, I kind of want to make a movie. If this is what making movies is like, if this is the payoff, absolutely.
Yeah, they get the magic shot. Manny saves the day and everything, and there's a butterfly shows up and lands on Brad Pitt, and it's just so the extra kiss of God, making movie magic. Yeah, it was a great payoff for the scene, and that leads us to, I don't know what happens. I can't remember what happens next in the film.
We learn a little bit more about Nellie. We learn a little bit more about Jack.
We learn that Nellie lives with her father in a very crappy apartment in LA, and that felt pretty real and cool, and her father's Eric Roberts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, welcome to the Eric Roberts movie podcast.
Yes. The esoteric Eric Roberts movie podcast is back.
Yeah. Totally unplanned. I had no idea he was in the movie. That was just that was the kiss of God. There you go.
Yes, Eric Roberts is back.
We were in the right movie.
Which, another Paul Thomas Anderson kind of thing, because Eric Roberts was in Inherent Vice, right? And people love Eric Roberts for reasons that remain somewhat confusing to me. Although, how did you feel about Eric Roberts in this movie?
He has a bit part, and he really hams it up.
Yes.
I enjoyed him a lot.
I didn't mind him either in this, honestly.
Like, you meet Margot Robbie, and you know a lot about her. And, like, she's this big personality, and she's kind of obnoxious, and she's kind of dramatic.
She's what they would have called a hot mess in Still May.
Yes. But then you see Eric Roberts, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess they're from New Jersey, that we don't know. I don't know if we learned that yet. Eric Roberts doesn't have any kind of lines or anything in your first scene. He's just silent and passed out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, is that Eric Roberts? Then I was like, yeah, that is Eric Roberts. Yeah.
So the next part of the movie really is the Nellie Leroy rise to fame,
which I loved.
Yeah, you loved this part. You didn't like her on the set, but you liked her.
Okay,
why did you like the rise to fame?
This thing of her and the other actress, they repair them after this first movie comes out and is a success, where she has a first thing, and they say that the two actors were friends, and as part of the promotion, and we get them. They repair them for another movie wherein Margot Robbie now has a much larger role. She's the co-lead, and it becomes one of these classic two actors dueling divas. And this bit really paid off for me in a way the early one didn't. I can't explain except for I just found the material sharper, and just the hijinks of these two women and them complaining about each other and the jokes and things. I thought they were quite good.
Yeah, so I will set you up for this. So Margot Robbie tries to take over the second movie in exactly the same way that she took over the first movie. But this time, Constance Moore is having none of it. No. And she finally pulls the card. This is my production. I'm paying for this. I want to get the shots I want to get. I am the star, not this little diva. So
what happens is Margot Robbie outfoxes her in a major way, goes and gets a nose job, which, by the way, I don't know that I noticed any difference with her appearance for the rest of the film.
It was very subtle.
Yeah, but she gets a nose job. She doesn't fake it, but she does it in order to delay the movie long enough that loses Constance Moore's money to the point that her production company has to shut down. The movie gets canceled, and Margot Robbie's free to make other movies.
Which apparently she does. Apparently she makes a lot of them, and she becomes, I don't know, if Jack Conrad is the Douglas Fairbanks, then Nellie Leroy has got to be the Clara Bow.
Okay.
She is the it girl.
Yeah, she becomes huge, and she's out of control, and what happens after that in the movie?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. They ride high and live to excess. Manny's still kind of a yes man in the shadows. I'm sure at some point we meet the jazz player again, and all the interactions of the jazz musicians with each other are pretty good in the movie. We also meet Lady Faye, I'm sure again, who kind of starts to have a crush on Margot Robbie from afar. And man, the Lady Faye character, except for when we saw her with her family, never does anything for me in the entire movie. Did she do much for you?
She represented a type. She represented that exotic Hollywood actress of the, early to mid 20s, when if you were the right kind of ethnic minority, you might be able to swing a career in the silence.
Well, I guess that was the only thing I liked about it, was that there were a few famous Asian actors and things in the early days of at least sound, even, because I've seen the daughter of Fu Manchu or whatever and things, and so various movies. So it was an accurate and underrepresented depiction of when we do these movies about old movies, you don't see these kind of characters, and we'll get to with the jazz player, but I guess eventually, yeah, he made sense too, what he does in the movie.
Yeah. To me, the Lady Faye character represents the woman that Hollywood had a use for right up until they didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
And she was never under any illusions as to why she had been kind of like a presence in Hollywood. She knew why she was there. And when she gets her career basically hacked off at the legs, it was a little painful to watch. A little more painful because it's Manny who ends up doing it to her.
Yeah. So I guess what happens is eventually these people, they're all riding high, and then sound comes in.
Yep.
And that's the big change. And what we get is, much like, I guess, in Singin' in the Rain, we hear about the jazz singers about to come out. And unlike in Singin' in the Rain, where people don't think it's going to go over, Brad Pitt especially immediately sees that this is going to be a thing. And much like in The Aviator, where he shuts down the Hells Angels and reshoots the whole movie with sound, they start getting into sound production. And we have our first Margot Robbie sound movie. And just fast forwarding to probably my favorite scene in the entire picture.
It was great.
To me, something on the level of the best Scorsese, Coen brothers kind of. I cannot overemphasize how taken I was with the editing and the shot selection, camera angles, camera movement, ideas in this sequence. This to me was, the high point of the movie was seeing the problems of shooting sound in an old movie that were, once again, kind of like with the Waiting for the Camera, very accurate to problems with sound. The cameraman has to be in a room, a shack, on the sound stage to hide the sound of the camera, and every little problem, you had to have a mic in the right place, and it was hot, and I'm doing a poor job describing
Yeah,
this.
gone are the days when you can go out into the middle of nowhere and film against a made-up backdrop in the middle of an open field. Now you've got to film in a big warehouse and everything is shut in and stultified. And I mean, you could take this scene from any one of half a dozen angles and they all work perfectly, and they all work well together, which is great. The one that really gutted me, again, was Margot Robbie's, because, and I know, I think you were more into the director problem.
You're right. The director and the first day, I think you nailed this. So the director character's problems just drew me in. Yeah. And it's such a genius scene.
Yeah.
Because you identified with the problems of Margot Robbie. You've got the first AD guy running around again. Everybody's back from that other Margot Robbie movie.
Yeah. The thing about the Nellie Leroy character, she has been coming in hot not. She's been taking over every movie she's in. She's just doing whatever she wants to do and just relying on like natural charisma and natural star power. She does a take. She doesn't like the way it turns out. She wants to do the next take differently, and the director says, go ahead, because it works. But now you have to hit that mark.
Yeah,
you have to hit that mark. And if you don't, you have to go back and do it again and again.
And one take she's too quiet, one take she's too loud. Got the sound guy way up in a booth that has to come outside because there are no walkie-talkies and no cell phones. And he has to come out of the booth and tell you whether or not it's working every take. So all of the problems with this, and it's another thing where I don't want to ruin the jokes of the film for people, but it's very funny and it builds and builds, and the tension and the time goes by, and Jeff Garlin as Wallach, the studio head, shows up and is not pleased with how slowly the movie's going. Although for a movie that seems like it's on day one, he shows up being mad about how long it's taking pretty quickly, it seems like.
To shoot scene one, like day one, scene one.
Yeah, he's seen they're already so behind. You know, one of the other things is people just coming on the set that before would be no problem. You just run on the set, but now they're shooting sound. And so if somebody opens a door and shows up, it blows everything. So you've got the red light, and of course people do show up and blow everything.
Because they don't know what the red light means yet.
Yeah, it's just all of a sudden time and money, and it's just going by.
And Nellie is feeling creatively stifled because she can't improvise, she can't seem to do anything right. And you've got the first AD who is just going off on everybody, which is amazing.
You also have the first intimation that maybe she's not going to be that good in sound, because somebody points out, very Singin' in the Rain, that her voice is the squeak, even though it's not the one they mean. That is a problem with the take. They're like, what's that squeak? And they're like, that's Nellie Leroy's voice. As a joke. Another good thing in the movie is, you know, people have little asides about things. The squeak in the take is not Nellie Leroy's voice, but these kind of side characters have their own ideas and a commentary on action. It's really brilliant. I didn't really like First Man at all. I still want to call the movie Drumline. What is the name of the drumming movie?
Whiplash.
Yeah,
You're talking about Whiplash.
Still haven't seen Whiplash, and I didn't like La La Land, which I know you loved La La Land.
I really liked La La Land.
Okay.
I really liked La La Land.
But I've seen nothing in those other two movies that prepared me for the idea that Damien Chazelle could conceive of some of the things in this movie. Mm-hmm. I was blown away by this scene.
And then you get to the climax of the whole thing, which is the successful take.
Yes.
Which, if you're looking at it in the abstract, is not really all that good.
No. They just got it through it.
Yeah, but that's the victory, right? It's like, well, I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading a story at one point about a studio executive who would stand up and applaud at the end of every feature he ever saw. Whether it was good or bad, it was like, I know how much work went into this. And at the end of that scene, you really, like, you've been through the ringer, you've been on the battlefield with these people, and you know how much it took for them just to get that one kind of subpar take in the can and move on to something else.
The one thing we've left out of explaining this scene is the building payoff of what happens here. I kind of don't want to ruin it.
I don't want to say anything about it either.
But there's quite a dark payoff to this scene that also made me laugh.
Yeah, Hollywood's the most I think we can say about it is Hollywood's a dangerous place when new technologies are being explored, and we just got to move on from there.
Yeah. Life is cheap.
It is kind of, you were right about Jack Conrad knowing how big the jazz singer was going to be, seeing the potential of sound technology for the motion picture industry, which is what makes the next turn in his arc all the sadder when you realize he's not going to be a part of it. And that's a realization that comes very gradually.
It does. Because he's so on the ball and likable They think, of course he's going to continue. And you also, unlike with Margot Robbie, has the
Jersey voice.
The Jersey voice is like Brad Pitt does not. He has Brad Pitt's voice. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Brad Pitt has Jack Conrad. I was thinking during this movie, has anybody come up with a solid Brad Pitt impression? Because he has these things he does that in every movie or in a lot of movies. And then I asked a buddy and he sent me a clip of a guy from Saturday Night Live doing Brad Pitt in like 2010 or something. And it was terrible. It was nothing like Brad Pitt. If they hadn't told you on Weekend Update that here's Brad Pitt, you would not have known it was Brad Pitt. Mm-hmm. But Brad Pitt's doing all of his classic Brad Pittings from 12 Monkeys and Fight Club, where he holds his hand in an OK symbol and then flicks his hands out and
he's one of the last real movie stars. He doesn't have to play anybody other than himself.
The more years go by, the more I think that he's the handsomest guy who's ever been in a movie. And here he's like, now he's pushing 60 and he's in amazing shape. His face doesn't look like a patchwork of plastic surgeries. He just looks handsome as hell. Mm-hmm. If you're ever like, would I trade looks with somebody? Yeah, I'd trade looks with Brad Pitt in a heartbeat.
I would trade looks with Brad Pitt now.
Yeah.
Much less like Brad Pitt from 30 years ago. Obviously, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. But no, even now, that guy, he looks amazing. And he's quite good in the movie. I could see, even if this movie doesn't go over, him getting nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, gosh, I hope so, because he earned it.
He did. He's great in this movie. Mm-hmm. He really is. And I'm sure throughout all of this, we've been seeing Jean Smart show up.
Yeah, she was in the battle scene, or she was the gossip columnist in the battle scene.
Yeah, she's like way up on a hill or something watching things.
Yeah, typing things out is like, and inventing this ridiculously purple prose, and then just stopping and saying, oh, who am I kidding? This is all crap. But yeah, you see her from time to time. But the big revelation, it's kind of a 1-2 punch. First, her interview with him for the magazine, and then him barging into her office.
Jean Smart's had a big comeback in a way, right? Like, based on the Watchmen TV show. Mm-hmm. Is that what made this for her?
I have no idea.
Have you seen the Watchmen TV show?
I have not. I do know it's a thing.
I started it, and after a couple episodes, I was just like, I'm not into this at all. But I think that's like the basis of her big comeback. Of course, she's from Designing Women.
Yes.
Which I saw recently, the director Mike Hodges died, and I was a big fan of some of Mike Hodges' pictures like Get Carter and Pulp, and as a boy, Flash Gordon. Mm-hmm. And as an adult also, I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. I watched Damien, The Omen 2. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this?
No, only the first one.
Man, me too. I'd only seen the first one. The second one is not as good, but the best part of the movie is Meshach Taylor from Designing Women. That's one of the most brutal deaths I've seen in a movie in some time. There are a couple of good brutal deaths in the movie.
Well, what I love about Jean Smart, she pops up in the oddest thing. She seems to do whatever she wants. She's a working actress. But despite the fact that she's got a reputation for comedy, the whole Designing Women thing, like, I remember during that brief period when I was actually watching 24, she showed up as the first lady to what's his name? Oh, this is going to drive me nuts.
Dennis Haysbert?
Oh, no. He was a white president.
Jimmy Smits.
No. Playing with me now, man. And that's the West Wing anyway.
Yes.
Don't pull that on me. And I can see his face, and it's driving me nuts, because I know him from, like, he's done a couple of Star Trek episodes, and Gregory Itzin.
Well, I don't even know who that is.
Okay, so he plays like a corrupt Nixonian-style president in the aftermath of Dennis Haysbert.
Oh, so he's post-Haysbert.
He's post-Haysbert in the aftermath of that. And she plays his first lady, who everyone writes off as kind of a duh. And she is so much smarter than everyone thinks she is. She's much smarter than her corrupt husband.
Do you think she's aged out of playing a live-action Miss Piggy?
Yes.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. Go into this scene, and this to me is the core scene in the movie, where Brad Pitt goes into her office after he reads his column, or her column, Is Jack Conrad Finished?
Oh, but first, he gets another wife.
Yes.
That is a big stage actress.
Yes.
And she kind of belittles film and stuff, and then he receives news that a recurring character has passed away, who he is close with.
Yeah, the George character,
The Lucas
Haas character.
Yes. Yeah, and this sets him off on another one of his tirades about how the movies are real art and good, and no one cares about her stage plays like they care about his movies. And to me, that was another one of the top scenes in the movie. For as far as serious moments of the movie that weren't really meant to be comedic, him dealing with the grief of Lucas Haas and taking it out on her and sticking up for the movies, it really worked for me.
Yeah, in the hands of a lesser actor, in the hands of a lesser director who could not make you feel that connection, it would have been farcical. But Babylon's best moments come when it sidles right up to the edge of what would be ridiculous in anyone else's hands and somehow manages to make it work.
But so what happens is he kicks this. She's been trying to help him learn how to read lines for sound, his wife.
Yep.
And he kicks her to the curb, and then he goes out and makes a movie, does his lines, and it's terrible. And we have first we had Margot Robbie seeing some people laughing at her and her father, or hearing them through a wall. Mm-hmm. And it was like her heartbreak at being a joke. But the much more effective scene is Brad Pitt going to a movie theater and seeing people laughing at him in the movie because he's so bad.
And it's not we keep coming back to Singin' in the Rain for obvious reasons, but it's not the overt yuck guffaws. The audience is not being like openly disrespectful, hooting and hollering and throwing stuff. It's like he delivers one line and the guy just...
Which is the line from Singin' in the Rain.
Which is the line from Singin' in the Rain, and the guy just the snicker in the throat. And that's it. But you don't need any more.
And Brad Pitt is heartbroken, and because we know how much being good means to Brad Pitt, you really feel it. And then Gene Smart writes a terrible article about him being done in the movies. Mm-hmm. A real hatchet job, and he goes and tells her off, and then she tells him off.
Mm-hmm. To me, again, it was the core scene in the movie. It was the centerpiece of this is the transition era, and it's much more obvious with Margot Robbie's character. It's much more obvious with Nellie as to why she won't work.
Yeah.
But why he won't work is much harder to see, because he is handsome and he's capable of delivering his lines. The lines are not good, but they're not like laughable.
Well, in the interim of this, I did not care for this scene as much. I thought it started off good, then at the end I thought it did branch into the farcical a little bit. This where she's talking about how people be seeing him long after everyone is dead and all this. I was like, it's getting a little too purple for me right here.
No, but she's a purple writer.
She is,
and that was that.
I won't say it wasn't terrible, but
no.
It wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, for me that was the core of the core of the movie right there. The dancing with angels and ghosts line is just that hit me.
The one person though that sound really works out for is Diego Calva.
Yes.
Because what happens is he gets a genius idea or steals one, or he doesn't steal it. He actually is classy about it. He is on set wherein Jack Conrad is going to be a bit player in a scene where a lot of silent stars are seeing Singin' in the Rain together in a fake rainstorm in a Busby Berkeley style musical kind of number, and which brings up how old the song Singin' in the Rain is. It's actually a song from 1929.
Yep.
And which we'll get to my feelings on that later. However, the band playing the song off camera includes Sidney, the jazz trumpeter. After the take, Sidney comes over by Diego, and Diego asks him what he thinks. He says, "Man, you're pointing your cameras in the wrong direction." Mm-hmm. And this gets Diego looking at the band, and then he and Sidney start making shorts, jazz music shorts.
Yeah,
and these were a real thing, these jazz music shorts that starred Cab Calloway, Louis Armstrong, and I thought that was really neat. And when they end up being a hit, and they also want to employ Diego Calva to produce Spanish language versions of movies, which was another big thing in the early 30s that we don't talk about a lot, and could be its own movie about. They would film some movies during the day, and then at night they would film the same movie in Spanish with the same sets, but with a new cast of show in Mexico.
Yeah, they very famously did this with Dracula.
Yes, that's the most famous. That's the one I've seen.
Yeah,
the Spanish.
You've seen both versions.
Yes,
and you know that the Spanish language is better. Like
yeah.
leaps and bounds as a movie. It's not as iconic, but as a movie, it's much better.
Yeah, the Bela Lugosi Dracula, although I love Bela Lugosi in it, is one of those movies that when I saw it as a kid, I thought it was awesome. And then when I saw it as an adult, I was like, wow, that's really the intoxicating strangeness of vampires really went a long way in making this a success, because this is an awful movie in comparison to Frankenstein or The Invisible Man, which I think are hold up as pretty good movies.
Especially The Invisible Man, yeah. That's or the Mummy, the first real.
Yeah, the Mummy's definitely better than Dracula too.
Yeah, but yeah, he's so he starts making these jazz shorts, and he gets his own office, his big name in the sky, but he doesn't want you to think that he's a big guy. He's not Manuel. He's just
just Manny.
He's just Manny. He's just a Manny.
Yeah.
He's just a Manny. And he continues to be the fix-it Manny.
Yeah, that's right.
And
we also get Sidney's rise in new digs and new car and nice house and everything. And this was kind of the good old days part, Scorsese intoxication montage that did work for me. I liked seeing these guys get to come up and get nice things.
Mm-hmm. As long as they know why they're there.
Yeah, right.
As if I can use a more loaded term, as long as they know their place.
Yeah.
And especially with Sidney, that comes back to bite him in the butt hard.
Becomes one of the big scenes in the movie, wherein both of them get a crucible. They're making one of these shorts, and a light is shining on Sidney's face, who is the star of the short. So he's lit. The cat made a noise. You're a bad kitty.
She just wants some attention.
Yeah.
She just wants some love.
She's a star. Stars are not made. You're either a star or you ain't.
Yep, and that's true for her.
Oh, you know what we skipped over? The party, Eric Roberts is supposed to wrestle a cobra, a rattlesnake, and then Margot Robbie does and gets bitten by a rattlesnake.
Yeah, you alluded to the beginning of that, because she shows up at this big Hollywood soiree with the entire USC football team, and she goes to the bathroom and hears from other people what a joke she is, what a joke
this is what sets her off to show. This is a weird scene and kind of interesting, because she wants to shut her dad either up. Her dad's a blowhard.
Yes.
Maybe boozy blowhard or drugged blow. He's a dissipated blowhard who likes to tell a story about a time he wrestled a rattlesnake over and over, among, I'm sure, other stories he tells ad nauseum. And she kind of snaps and just demands that they go find a rattlesnake for him to wrestle. And kind of a weird put up or shut up moment for her with her dad, being fed up with her dad and her life.
I read this as she is trying to get him hurt. Maybe killed.
Yeah, maybe killed. Yeah, this is very interesting. It's a complicated, tough scene, and I'm not sure it totally worked for me, but I thought the idea, at least, was interesting. He ends up passing out, and she fights the rattlesnake and gets bitten, and we get another one of our big gross-out scenes.
Where Lady Faye comes in to save the day.
Yes, and we get the actual sucking and close-ups of the venom oozing out with pus from Margot Robbie's skin, which of all the gross-out moments of the film, I liked this one the best. For some reason, seeing that poison pus come out, I kind of liked it.
It felt very real.
It did.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a time I really saw that before.
No, I've never seen that in the movie. Not to that like, gross extent.
It was pretty gross. I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
And then this spurs on Lady Faye and her's romance. Lady Faye and Margot Robbie then become an item after this party.
And this is ultimately what leads, if I remember right, to Faye getting fired.
Yes.
As part of Manny's efforts to fix Nellie's career. And takes Faye aside. Again, it's interesting that when it comes to Faye and Sydney, it's Manny who does the kneecapping in both instances.
Yes, which brings us back to this short with Sydney, wherein Sydney is the central character and the band around him, and they're all black guys.
Yeah.
And Sydney is in the middle, and he's being lit brighter so as to have the spotlight on him, but it's making his complexion so light. He looks like a white guy, whereas the rest of the band looks black. And in the South, apparently, they cannot show an integrated band in theaters and have Southern crackers go see the movie and like it.
I mean,
so it has to be very clear that Sydney is black. This is one of the times where the filmmaking element didn't work totally for me, and maybe kind of kneecapped the scene for me a little bit. First off, why not adapt the lighting a little bit? Second off, is this the only shot of this short film? Are there not other angles where it can be clear that Sydney is black, and then just this shot he's brighter? Is it really going to come off that he's white?
Well, the important thing is that Aunt Patty's, or Aunt Pitty's, smelling salts are all going to be saved. Because we're going to make sure that everyone knows that Sydney is black.
Yes, by making Sydney a black man wear blackface in this short so that it can get played in the South.
You know, I watched a party with, like, lots of nudity and drug use. I watched a woman suck snake venom out of another woman's neck in the middle of a desert, and this is the scene that just caused me the most cringe. The Sydney in blackface.
Which it was supposed to.
Yeah, and it should, and he's clearly feeling the embarrassment of it.
And his performance is quite good. Yeah. Well, I had trouble buying in totally with the scene because of the things I just said, and also because the movie hadn't made a big thing of his blackness, in that there was no storyline in the film of him struggling to be himself and not have to coon or play up the blackness or do any of these things.
They did kind of nod toward it at the party where he shows up, and this is also the party where Nellie embarrasses herself so badly. But we're trying to build our images, and he shows up. He's this very popular jazz musician, and you've got all of these extremely rich, extremely upper crust, extremely white people around him, and they're expressing admiration for him, and he says thank you very much. But then they just go like that one step too far.
Oh yeah.
It becomes very obvious that they really do see him more as a token than anything else.
And this is just immediately leaves.
Yeah. And this is Damien Chazelle's very short, like, minute-and-a-half remake of Get Out.
Yeah, that little moment at that party with him was quite good. It kind of still doesn't change what I'm trying to say in that it wasn't a building thing throughout the movie, throughout his characters. Very limited arc. You don't see him as often as any of the other main characters.
That's very true.
But and maybe it was something they cut out for time. I don't know, but either way, I liked that it wasn't a thing, because just on a human level, if you were a black guy, you're not. I don't know, this is an audio thing, so people can't see that you're not a black man. But if you were, you wouldn't need a whole arc that you're not doing these things for this to matter to you, and it shouldn't matter to us that it's so abrupt in the movie.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
It didn't to me. I mean, it worked, that he wouldn't want to do this, and it would be a big deal to him.
Yeah, but you can easily believe that in 1930, he's got to prove something to somebody.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to do it.
No.
He doesn't want to put on the blackface, but the way they finally get him, just like they did with Manny, is if you don't wear this blackface, all these other guys aren't going to get paid, and you're going to be the guy responsible for all these guys not being able to feed their families.
Yeah, so he sucks it up. He does this humiliating, embarrassing, degrading thing because he feels like he has to do it, or he'll be letting everyone else down all of whom again are black, and then he just walks off the lot, and except for one scene right at the end, he walks out of the movie.
Yeah, he quits the movies in a very noble thing, I guess.
Yeah, good for you, man. I'm glad you had some self-respect.
Yeah, that was a cool little story there.
It's a shame that you had to choose between your self-respect and your career.
And being in the rest of Babylon.
Yeah, but good for you for making the right choice.
Yeah, just being true to yourself, that's right. Like, it was pretty cool. This is where we get into kind of, I guess, we don't ever really have the Hays Code or whatever that really come up, which I thought was going to be an element of the movie, but we do have a thing about the morals of these movies, and the morals of the movie stars, and Margot Robbie's lifestyle, in addition to her lack of adapting to sound.
Yeah, this is where her "I'm the wild child" image comes back to bite her hard.
Yes, and it comes out that she's a lesbian, or having a lesbian relationship with Lady Faye. And so this becomes the second thing. Diego Calva gets put in charge of trying to save her career, or she'll be out of pictures, and he has to then fire Lady Faye and tell Lady Faye to leave Margot Robbie because it's bad for Margot Robbie's image, and they no longer need title cards for dialogue in these sound movies.
Yeah, and you could easily have just left it at we don't need title cards anymore. And I mean, from a business perspective, it would have made sense. It would have made perfect sense. I am glad he went the extra mile to make it very clear.
So he's having to pay for his success with doing these very uncomfortable things that are no fun, and he's kind of becoming the bad guy in a way.
He is becoming the bad guy, but he's becoming the bad guy with a really nice office, and the bosses all know him, and he's on a, all but a first name basis with all but the biggest of them.
Yes. And so this is where we have the part of, we're getting pretty far into the movie, wherein Margot Robbie is trying to rehabilitate and is now under the tutelage of Jean Smart. Yes, to try to talk correctly and behave correctly and dress correctly. And they go to a fancy party, and Diego Calva's there, and they're meeting some Rothschilds. I guess we get a Rothschild. We do get some real people, I guess, here mixed in with more phony baloney people, some swells.
Yeah.
And she can't hold her fire.
Well, no.
Hold her water.
And for obvious reasons. They ask her questions. They are trying to catch her out. That becomes very obvious very quickly. They know that she's putting on airs. They prove it to their own satisfaction in a way that she is not supposed to be able to notice, but of course, being a streetwise Joyzy Goyle, she does. And just goes nuts on them in return.
So where we have the Ibsen Miss Julie joke thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a satisfying payoff, even though it's going to hurt her career.
Now we have maybe the biggest gross out scene, because I don't know, the elephant shitting was pretty darn gross. And the party, the whole beginning was very gross.
Yeah, running it a close second is Margot Robbie running back in and pulling a Peter Dinklage after he comes out of the crate in season 5 of Game of Thrones. Here goes the vomit.
Yeah, we have massive projectile vomiting capping her telling off all these people and doing some acting out. And she eats all this food and drinks all this stuff, and then projectile vomits, which is another Coen Brothers thing. They love vomiting. And frankly, for as much as I don't like bodily functions in the movies, I like the golden shower earlier, and like I said, the elephant defecating really displeased me. I didn't like looking at those things. I like when people throw up in the movies. It does make me laugh, and I did enjoy her projectile vomiting to a degree. It wasn't maybe my favorite thing in the movie, but...
Yeah, I mean, in and of itself, it was disgusting. But the whole point was to make you are happy that she is making these Rockefeller types, like, viscerally uncomfortable with her presence, getting a little of her own back, even though, again, it is going to kill her career.
Yeah, she's crossed a Rubicon of vomit there.
Yeah.
And so now we're to where Brad Pitt kills himself.
Yeah. With the door open, just a crack, and because, a star needs an audience,
Yeah.
even for a death scene.
Yeah, and we do have kind of thing where we don't actually see him kill himself, but it's because he's off in a part of his bathroom that's not on camera, even though the door's open to the bathroom, and kind of, like Roman Polanski, Rosemary's Baby, famous moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't, whereas, like the documentary Visions of Light, and then Quentin Tarantino later in his novel Once Upon a Time in Hollywood both point out that in the bathroom scene in Rosemary's Baby, when the action appears off screen, the talent of Polanski was to make you want to look around the corner and see what was happening. In this movie, you don't have that. You know exactly what's going on off screen, and you're glad not to see it.
Yeah, and you see plenty.
Yeah,
you see enough.
You see enough. You're right.
Mm-hmm. And before that, we have what, again, and to me, this whole sequence did go just a little bit over the edge. But he has the conversation with Faye, where he says, I'm done. I know I'm done. But I've had a good run. I've had a good time in Hollywood. He gives the big tip to the bellboy on the way up the stairs to his room, because he's not going to need that money.
One of those times where I could predict the punchline of the joke on that.
Yeah, and it's obvious where this is going basically from the minute he walks away from that conversation.
Oh, even during that conversation, I was like, I know who's going to be the guy that gave the bellboy's last big tip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there it is, and there he is, and then there he isn't.
Yeah. Then now Brad Pitt's gone, and now we never see Eric Roberts again. I don't know. Do we? Oh, I guess he said goodbye to Faye,
and I think that's pretty much it for her.
And that's it for her. And now Margot Robbie is, in a long-running thing throughout the film, is that Margot Robbie's character likes to gamble. Yeah. She was playing poker at the party in the beginning. Then the way she shows up with the USC team, the backstory on that is that she beat them at poker and they have to be her slaves or something. Mm-hmm. And this all comes into kind of, did you find it off-putting that all of a sudden the film becomes a crime movie?
I don't know that I would say off-putting that it became a crime movie. I found the crime movie it became off-putting. But again, I think you were supposed to. I
kind of liked the crime movie it became in a way. It had hits and misses to me, but I did find it odd. Like Siskel and Ebert, or at least Ebert, used to say, if all of a sudden your movie's a courtroom movie out of nowhere, 2/3 of the way through, or in the third act, you've got problems. I also think if your movie suddenly becomes a crime movie out of nowhere late in the movie, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I did kind of find it too convenient, a little contrived, that suddenly the movie becomes a crime movie, wherein she has lost a bunch of, she's lost $80,000 in gambling to a character named the Duke.
She goes to, of course...
They're going to pour acid on her vagina if she doesn't pay them.
Yes, so she goes to Manny because he's the guy you go to
and he loves her.
And because he loves her. And because he loves her, he screams at her for about 30 seconds and then...
tells her he loves her.
And I'm going to fix your problem.
Yeah.
So
this leads to the third act of the movie. The movie doesn't exactly have acts. It's like a Scorsese film where it's sequences. And this becomes the big sequence of she starts living with him and they do a bunch of cocaine while he tries to solve the problem. And this is like our Alfred Molina Boogie Nights. I got very Boogie Nights feelings from this, wherein they're bottoming out, but somebody has turned up to give him the money. And are you about to look up who the guy is that gives him the money? Who is this actor? Did you recognize him?
Rory Scovel. No, I did not.
He was quite
I'm sure
good in the
I've
movie.
seen him in something else somewhere along the line, but no.
He was working on those Margot Robbie movies. He's not is he the script supervisor or something?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's friends with the prop guy.
Prop guy. And the prop guy apparently has agreed to lend him or give him $80,000 somehow. And Manny's doesn't ask too many questions about this. He's just happy that somebody he knows has $80,000 to give him. Manny and the script supervisor guy go together to the Duke's mansion, who is a dangerous criminal, to give him this $80,000 in a satchel to set Margot Robbie free. And then this is where we meet first another Wolf of Wall Street cast member, Ethan Suplee, as a spitting bodyguard who hawks loogies. How'd you like this?
He's fantastic. Perfectly gross.
Yeah, it was very gross. I felt that maybe they were... I don't know if it needed Ethan Suplee, but at any rate, Ethan Suplee works for...
Tobey Maguire.
As the Duke. And Tobey Maguire as the Duke. This is like my last great favorite part of the movie, is the scene where they interact with the Duke for the first time.
Yeah.
It's the classic thing where you go to buy drugs and you have to hang out with the drug dealer a little bit before you can take your weed. But instead it's like they can't just give him the money and leave. They have to be polite.
And he uses that to tell them his brilliant film ideas.
To ruin the joke, he has written down in a notebook that he apparently keeps on him just in case he meets someone to tell all these movie ideas to. But we're also underselling how crazy Tobey Maguire looks.
Yeah. Yellow teeth, white skin with red splotches. He is not a healthy dude.
No, he's living an unclean lifestyle. He's very rich, very filthy, and seedy, and lamenting that the good old days of Hollywood and LA are gone when they had parties like in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, there's only one party, Matt. There's only one party left in town that's anything like those great old parties that we saw in the beginning. Do you remember that great party that we saw at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was.
Yeah.
I was like, that didn't seem like a good party.
That did not seem like a good party to me at the time, and yet I would so much rather be at that party than the party Tobey Maguire takes us to.
What did you think of Tobey Maguire's ideas for movies?
I thought they were brilliant. Is he in the room? Is he listening to this? If Toby, if you're listening to this, your ideas were brilliant. If he's not listening to this, they were garbage.
I think I was the only person in the theater laughing at the second idea, and I was laughing a lot. In fact, I think that...
You were not the only one.
Some of the words he uses in this scene and things he says, I think offended some younger viewers next to us on our row. I heard some gasps, like some pearl clutching, and I was like, he's not supposed to be a good man. He's saying these things because he's a bad guy. But I think that they did not like even hearing these words in a movie.
They did not.
But he made me laugh so hard in this scene. I was like, man, Tobey Maguire's A, brilliantly cast, and B, just this material is quite funny. And once again, none of this is, like I said, it's very much the Alfred Molina Boogie Nights thing, and this movie does not excel in originality.
No.
No,
it really does not. And during a lot of the runtime, I was a little unhappy with that. Especially when you can see where some of the riffs are coming from. Like, they're not only not thinly disguised, they're just basically cut and paste jobs.
Yeah, like it's like you can see the fingerprints of who he's imitating and stuff all throughout this. And almost every scene in the movie has been done in another movie.
Yeah. Until we get to the last scene, which completely changed my mind on all of that. But we got to talk about the party first.
But what I wanted to say also is that I loved the movie in that, while it wasn't original, it was well done.
Yes, it was extremely well done.
And so then we get to this party, which is now another filmmaker gets added into the list of people we've seen imitated, David Lynch.
I think David Lynch would not be happy with that comparison. Lynch is all about like the mixing of the bitter and the sweet and the light and the dark together and juxtaposing them against each other, and there is no sweetness and no light at this party.
We get elephantiasis.
Yes, you do get the Elephant Man.
Sound.
You do get the Elephant Man.
Yeah, we go into this party that is just descending into layers of hell, and Tobey Maguire promising them they need to see this thing. And
yes, this guy who wants to be a medieval warrior or a barbarian. Like, you can build the whole movie around this guy, he says.
And then he acts like he's mistaken about where the guy is, but you feel like the whole time he knew where the guy was and is just using it as an excuse to make them see all these things.
Yeah. Did you fear for their lives at any point before they reached the bottom?
I felt like I pretty much knew exactly where this scene was going.
Okay, I did not. So
I was like, as we descend through these different, very disturbing, very hard R rated rooms of grossness, slowly, I was like, they're gonna do something to, I thought Tobey Maguire, it turns out to be Ethan Suplee, and have to run back out of all these rooms quickly.
Yes.
Which made this scene, and I felt that when we meet the warrior guy, what he's doing was a little weak compared to the things we just seen in all the other rooms.
I would have to agree with that. I will say, as we got further in, I became less afraid for them because I picked up on what you just said. But as they were going into the tunnel, where I had absolutely no idea, for all I knew, Tobey Maguire was just making up this story to lure them out to a tunnel on the outskirts of Los Angeles to kill them gruesomely. And I was afraid that's where the scene was going, because we're nearly at the end of the movie.
And we also, I did fear for the script supervisor in this scene. Not so much Manny. But we also buried the lead of the problem with the money.
What problem with the money?
Is that the prop man made the money, literally. It's funny money for them. It's Monopoly money.
And Manny did not check to see that he was going in with $85,000 of fake money to pay off a drug lord for his girlfriend's debt.
Yeah.
Manny, that's strike one.
Yeah, not wise. And that was another thing where you could also tell the people on the road with us were not quite as swift because they caught on to that it was fake money like 1 second, I think, later than you're supposed to. But they still got a kick out of that. They did enjoy that moment of the movie. But yeah, I was like, I think you were supposed to laugh at this 1 second earlier. It was a good beat when you find out. And why did it really did call into question, why does Manny think this prop guy has all this money and he doesn't when he has a much better job than prop guy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, why would you not try and catch some money from the studio safe somewhere along the line? Of course, maybe he thinks that that's where the guy got it, and he's just not going to ask any questions. But if it's me and I'm going to pay off a drug lord, I'm checking the money ahead of time. I'm counting it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. This was kind of bad in a way. It was a good joke.
Yeah.
It didn't really bear out.
Yeah.
They kill Ethan Suplee when the money is discovered for fake, and then they have to run out and run for their lives. And then it becomes a thing where Margot Robbie and Diego Calva are going to skip town with the script supervisor. Apparently they all have to stick together and skip town, which made no sense to me.
I don't know. If I were the script supervisor, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but not to them.
No, not to them.
Good point. If I was him, I'd want to be with them. Yeah, so they're just going to skip town, and Margot Robbie doesn't want to leave, but then is convinced to. And they go, for some reason, they have to stop by the script supervisor's apartment and pick him up or something.
Yeah.
And Margot Robbie wanders out from the car into an alley. But first we get this idea that they're going to get married.
Yes, she's just swept up in the romance of it. They stop at like some little party. She goes to dance. She hears some music. She goes to dance.
Some kind of journalists film them making out and at this party and dancing.
Yeah, she gets recognized for who she is for probably the last time.
Yeah, before she goes to Mexico to be a housewife.
Yes, which, beats staying in a place where you owe major gambling debts. Yes. There is that.
Yes, and your career is already dead.
Yeah, and then she, as you said, as Manny goes up to get the script supervisor and I think his boyfriend, is that how we're supposed to read that?
He says it's his roommate, and I don't think we get any evidence that they're actually lovers, or at least I didn't pick up on that. I thought when he said roommate, I just assumed that in this
they actually are roommates. Okay.
This was a good laugh, and just seeing the guy, he doesn't have any lines, and he was a gross looking dude, and it's a gross looking place the guy lives in too. And I did like the brief roommate. And then this guy that he worked for, Tobey Maguire, shows up and kills everybody but Manny, and for some reason lets Manny go.
Yeah.
And did you recognize the guy playing this henchman?
I did not.
He looked like a grown-up child actor to me, but I don't know who the child actor was or what I would know him from. He looked familiar. He also reminded me of the grown-up child actor that plays like a a scary gunman in Westworld, the TV show.
I could see that. And then Margot Robbie wanders out of the movie.
Yeah, she wanders into an alley, and we've seen a car parked like near the alley, and it's at the same time as the gunman goes into the other thing. And I think, did you take it that the gunman came from that car, and that whoever was in that car probably did away with her? Or...
No. I think she actually made it through.
Oh, and just disappeared into the night.
And then
Sharon
she
Stone
came out of
singing
nowhere.
autograph.
She came out of nowhere. She goes back to nowhere.
And then we get a chilling thing wherein that we see an article published that her body was found and she died. She was 34.
34, yeah. And it's not even above the fold news. It's like the 4th or 5th story down the page.
Pretty sad.
And I got something to say about that, but not right now.
Okay. Manny goes to Mexico, and then we flash forward to
1952.
Yes.
1952, a very critical year.
That's right.
And I wasn't sure where they were going. I hoped I knew where they were going, and as it turned out, I was right.
I had no idea that this was about to happen. But he shows up back in Los Angeles now with a Mexican child and wife. Wife of, we assume, many years, and a young child of maybe 10 years old or something, or 9, a little boy. And he wants to show him where he used to work. And at the kinescope pictures, and he talks to a guy at the gate, and then his son is bored immediately by kinescope pictures, which is clearly the Paramount lot on Melrose.
Yeah.
The wife takes the son home and tells Manny just to chill and enjoy his day, and Manny wanders around LA, wanders around Hollywood, and ends up in the movies.
Yep.
He goes to see a movie. What does he go see?
He goes to see Singin' in the Rain, which is beat for beat Babylon. the major through lines of Babylon, only at half the length, and with 1/100th of the violence.
And vomit.
Yes.
And snake venom.
Yes.
And golden showers.
Yeah,
and
it
elephant
is.
feces.
And Manny is sitting there, and he's seeing,
and at least only 1/10 of the penises.
It is impossible after watching Babylon to not look at, there's Don Lockwood, who is clearly Jack Conrad. There's Lena Lamont, who is clearly Nellie Leroy, Jersey accent and all. There's Cosmo Brown, who is the guy who comes up with the big ideas. He's the guy who notices the jazz singer. He's the guy who makes things work behind the scenes. My God, he's Manny.
And Manny weeps and is taken, and the whole audience is taken in by Singin' in the Rain, as audiences were in 1952. And
Except
have continued to be.
for Manny.
Yeah.
Everyone is laughing. Everyone is having a good time at this musical comedy the way you're supposed to. But Manny is in misery. Manny is in tears.
Is he in misery?
I think so.
Or is he just like biting into the ultimate Madeline or something?
I think he goes through an evolution on either side of the montage.
Okay.
But I think at first he is weeping for
Lost
people
friends.
he knew that aren't there anymore, and kind of the injustice of it all, of seeing this beautiful, vivacious, charismatic young woman that he knew and fell in love with being recast as this ditzy airhead who turns out to be the villain of the whole piece.
Yes, she sure does. And she has the machinations like Margot Robbie in the movie to upstage and make it about her again. And
yeah, but not the brain power that Margot Robbie's character has, that Nellie has.
Then we end with, or we think we end with, an overhead shot of the audience in some kind of note of like, the movies.
Yeah.
But then, well, this is the thing where you said that you say, I don't know if you were joking about this being the only original part of the movie. I felt it quite the opposite, that this is where we went directly into Stanley Kubrick territory with the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
You did specifically reference the Star Child after we left the theater.
Yes.
And I can't blame you for doing that.
Yeah, that's why we all of a sudden go into a psychedelic trip of moving through film history and color and seeing clips of movies, Avatar, Terminator 2, George Méliès's movies.
And there was a 2001 shot of
There is one shot of 2001.
Not that shot, but it's the space station shot.
Yes. No shots from Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson, the Coens, but one shot of Kubrick. It's 2001. Mm-hmm. No shot of Clockwork Orange where Malcolm McDowell sings Singin' in the Rain.
No.
Have you heard the story about when Malcolm McDowell ran into Gene Kelly at a party?
I have not heard this.
And Gene Kelly just walked away from him in disgust and wouldn't talk to him. Apparently not a happy camper that they used Singin' in the Rain.
Cannot blame him for that.
But it turns out they didn't invent having Singin' in the Rain. But I guess he did do the dance.
Yeah.
It's very directly referencing the movie.
Yeah. And at the end of all of these shots from film history, it really is like film history, the montage.
And you get shots from the movie Babylon.
Yes.
To cap it.
Interspersed with it after, and I think this is the key, getting like blue, green, red, like explicitly just all blue screen, all green screen, all red screen. It's like, this is light and this is sound.
And you get the chemicals mixing too, color chemicals and emulsion.
Yeah, this is what all of this is made of. And then you get the shots from Babylon, and these are the people who made it.
Strangely colored pictures of Brad Pitt and stuff. I was like, wow, this movie loves itself.
It does. And then at the end, you cut back to Manny, who I think has had this epiphany about
He's
the
like
movies.
in a bubble in space.
No, but he's in a bubble in the audience.
Yes.
And right as we fade out on black, he starts just a little bit to smile. Just a little bit.
Did you like that ending?
I thought it was the most audacious ending to a movie I've ever seen. I had very mixed feelings about it at the beginning, and by the end it had me completely on board with it.
Oh, wow. I hated it. After enjoying so much of the movie, I was like, oh man, it kind of came full circle. After I hated the beginning, I hated the end.
Well, why did you hate it?
Just so, I mean, it was audacious, but it was also just pretentious, and I found it boring.
Okay.
I found it quite boring. I was like, I don't think I'm gaining anything from this. I already love the movies and understand the movies, and I didn't need any of this.
Okay, I took something slightly different away, but I think I gotta swing back around again to that. The same way that I did with Margot Robbie disappearing into the darkness. I got thoughts about those.
Oh, really?
Yes, but they only become fully contextualized when I talk about my pick for the double feature, which is, for those of you who have forgotten, the name of this podcast is Double Feature.
Yes.
And we, after having talked about Babylon at length, we are each going to recommend a movie to pair with it and also tell you what order we would watch it in. You want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay, I will do my best. My pick for what to pair with Babylon is, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this.
Hey, there's Don Lockwood. Tell us how it all happened. From the beginning.
Well, at first we set the stage with a song.
We're all ruined. Talking pictures. Public is screaming for more.
Make a musical.
Musical? Sure. Make a musical.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Singin' in the Rain. I would absolutely pair these two movies together for... You're looking at me. Don't look at me like that. You're looking at me like I just grew a third head to go with the second head I also apparently just grew. Yes, I would pair this with Singin' in the Rain. Singin' in the Rain is about half of Babylon's length.
A little over.
It is about... It's one of those movies that I think if you love the movies, you have to watch it at some point. But it's also a movie that at this point is beyond criticism, effectively, because it just is its own thing at this point. Singin' in the Rain. It is a classic. You can love it or hate it, but you kind of have to approach it on the terms of millions and millions and millions of people have loved this movie, and I gotta watch it for that reason. I would watch Singin' in the Rain first. I will tell you about my ideal double bill in just a second, but I would put Singin' in the Rain first. It is this perfect candy-coated... Are we going to talk about these movies?
Yes.
Let's talk about these
Singin'
movies.
in the Rain.
Let's talk about Singin' in the Rain then. Okay. Okay, so Singin' in the Rain is from 1952. It's one of the classic Paramount musicals.
Stanley Donen directed?
Yes, Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly.
Yes.
And also starring Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds right at the beginning of her career, and Donald O'Connor, the song and dance man of long standing, and Gene Hagen, who plays Lena Lamont in the film. Yeah. The constantly underappreciated thing that makes this candy-coated confection work. The plot line of Singin' in the Rain is the plot line of Babylon, sort of.
See, I had never seen Singin' in the Rain, and so when they showed the clips of Singin' in the Rain that Manny sees at the end, I thought, we talked about how unoriginal Babylon is. They've just ripped off the entire movie of Singin' in the Rain. And then I saw the movie Singin' in the Rain, and I was like, oh, not really.
They did rip off large chunks of it, though. So Singin' in the Rain is the story of Don Lockwood, who is a silent era star. He's one of the biggest. He's in a team with this actress named Lena Lamont.
The trades and everything make it seem like they're in love.
They are so in love if you read Singin' in the Rain's version of Eleanor St. John. Yes. If you read the gossip columns, the fan magazines, they are so in love. But in reality, she is in love with him, and he cannot stand being around her for 1 minute longer than he has to be. They do a ton of silent pictures together, and they're all very adventure romance pictures, with him as the dashing knight and her as the princess / damsel in distress. And that is basically, they've built a career out of doing the same movie over and over and over again. Leaving the premiere of their latest movie, which you just know is going to be another smash hit, he gets accosted by some fans on a sidewalk, jumps onto the top of a bus, jumps down into a passing car, which just so happens to be driven by Debbie Reynolds, who pretends at first not to know who he is, even though she's really a gigantic fan. And she pretends not to know who he is because he comes off as obnoxious, full of himself, and a bit of a heel / lech, like somewhere in there. So she takes the opportunity to knock him down a peg or two on his, or 10, on his way back to his house.
And she is a serious actress.
On the legitimate stage.
Yes. Though she's not actually on the stage, she's more of a wannabe.
Yes, and she's not really so much of an actress as she is a fly girl who just happens to be part of the troupe that is performing at the after party of
wherein she busts out of a cake.
I love that scene every dang time. I don't even care.
I'll be honest, it's the strongest scene of the movie, because the one time I laughed during this movie genuinely is when he obviously is leching on her, and now at this party he's starting to feel superior again, because now he sees her real job is jumping out of cakes and things, and when he looks at the cake and he says like, well, now that I know where you live, can I drive you home? That I thought was the funniest line in the movie.
It was pretty good. It's pretty good. The sound revolution is coming to Hollywood, which we find out about at this party. We see some new sound sync technology demonstrated.
Yes, and people don't believe it. The man throwing the party with some amazingly bad teeth. Which was pretty cool.
Mr. R.F. Simpson, the head of the studio, everyone there thinks he's putting them on, and he is not. And they find out real fast.
They don't believe that sound can be synced.
Yeah, they find out real fast that he is not, though, when Warner Brothers takes this new sound sync technology that Simpson passes on and makes the jazz singer with it. And now we are really into, like, Singin' in the Rain territory, the heart of what Babylon takes. Or if you feel less kind about it than I do, rips off. We go through the whole thing about converting the silent production of The Dueling Cavalier, which is their next movie together. It's a French Revolution picture, to sound. Everything goes wrong in much the same way that everything goes wrong in Babylon.
Kind of. We have a different troubles with sound production scene. Instead of all of these real life problems that would be a problem for a real movie trying to make make it. We just have the problem that Lena Lamont cannot just speak into a mic.
Yes.
We have the one problem that was in all those old movies was where to put the mic, which is like why in all those 30s movies you see people like talking into bushes and near a lamp and things because they needed somewhere for this mic. But we have the problem Lena Lamont can't speak all the time into the mic. She keeps turning her head and they catch one word and they catch another. And instead of the guy coming out from the sound booth far away, we have the director continually running into the sound booth and checking and then coming back out. And we have kind of the invention of the lavalier microphone to put on her so that she can be nearer the mic. But even then she can't speak into the mic properly. And when she turns her head, one line will be quiet and the next line will be loud.
Super loud, because then she turns her head back and she's going right into the mic.
And then all of the sounds they're now making on the stage are being picked up. And we have that Don Lockwood was going to have dialogue.
Yes, Imperious Princess of the Night, if I remember this movie correctly, is supposed to be the line, but I don't feel comfortable with that, Dexter. Can I just say what I always say? I love you, I love you, I love you.
Which is what Brad Pitt said in Babylon in his first sound climax, when he does the kiss, like he does in every movie. But he just says, I love you, I love you, I love you. Now, one thing that Singin' in the Rain does have is that when they made their silent movies, their version of just that you could do anything is that they can, instead of saying lines of dialogue when they're supposed to be talking to each other in these silent movies, and they just need their lips to move, they say mean things to each other and make it look sweet.
Yeah, well, this is also the first time we get the hint that Lena Lamont is really devious. She has found out that Debbie Reynolds' character, Kathy Selden, was, working for Monumental Pictures. That's wrong. She's working at a nightclub. She is so embarrassed because in the process of trying to embarrass Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds throws a cake into Gene Hagen's face. This makes Lena Lamont mad, and as a result, Debbie Reynolds has lost her job. And then she actually ends up on the lot at Monumental, which becomes part of the movie.
You're right.
Later. And that's why they're saying mean things at each other. Gene Kelly is taking her to task. You got that poor kid fired, and she's defending herself.
And sometimes this movie, kind of often, just totally stops in its tracks and has a long song and dance number.
It's a Gene Kelly movie. Well, the whole reason Singin' in the Rain was made, I don't know if you know this, was because one of the big executives at Paramount had written a whole bunch of musical numbers in the 20s and early 30s and wanted a vehicle to put some of his big compositions in a movie, including Singin' in the Rain. And so it is a retroactive book musical where the songs are all 20 years older than the film. So almost a jukebox musical, really.
Yeah.
They complete production on the sound version of The Dueling Cavalier. They have the nightmarish scene of the premiere where everything goes wrong. You hear Gene Kelly's cane hit the wood and it makes this really embarrassing sound.
This was a scene, that can only exist in a comedy. It wouldn't have worked in Babylon where we're shown a more nuanced look at film production, because apparently in Singin' in the Rain they've never heard of editing.
Yes.
Every mistake they made has just been, or sound they've picked up has just been left in.
I think we're supposed to read that though as they didn't have any other takes.
Yeah, but I mean, even if they had no other takes, they could just cut the sound out of those.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, and they didn't know yet.
Yeah.
They didn't know, or maybe I don't know how the old wax record technology was supposed to work.
It's a far-fetched, I think, but at the same time, it's not supposed to be realistic.
It's supposed to be a comedy, and you're supposed to be cringing in embarrassment at this dialogue, and the audience just basically laughs them out of their own secret premiere. And now they are 6 weeks away from this thing needing to open all over the country. story.
And it's a terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie. It will destroy their careers if it goes into wide release. Basically, Cosmo, the Fix-It Man, the Manny of Singin' in the Rain, comes up with the basic idea of, go through, we're going to trim out some of the crappy scenes, we're going to add some new ones.
The way this inspiration happens is they all sing a song together. Debbie Reynolds and Cosmo or rather Donald O'Connor and Gene Kelly, they sing a song together at Gene Kelly's house. Maybe Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor's house together. It's not clear.
I'm pretty sure it's just Gene Kelly.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's just Gene Kelly.
They sing a song and they're like, man, Gene Kelly, you're such a good song and dance man that apparently has never come up in your career until this point that you're...
well, that's how he came up. He came up on vaudeville. On the live stage.
Which one of the best parts of the movie is at the beginning you see flashbacks as he's lying about the dignity. He's lying about how he came up.
He's not lying. He's inventing a beautiful narrative that just happens to be completely at odds with the truth.
Yes, and you see the truth as he's saying these things, and those little shots of the truth are quite good.
No, it's a great part of the movie. So they decide to turn the dueling cavalier into the Dancing Cavalier. It's going to become a musical. They're going to record some songs. They're going to put in some new scenes. They're going to do a wraparound story. And this is the weakest part of Singin' in the Rain that even I will not defend. The whole Broadway melody sequence.
My gosh. This scene would never end.
It was an 11-minute. I love it as an abstract aesthetic piece. It kills the forward momentum of a 90-minute movie.
Oh my goodness. 100-minute movie.
100-minute movie. But it does do that. And I'm not going to defend it. But anyway, they come up with the idea. And of course, you still have to get around Lena's Joyzy voice.
Which is much more farcical and arched than in
than Margot Robbie.
Yeah, it's a lot broader.
It really is.
Which is intentional.
And they come up with the idea for Debbie Reynolds' character to step in for Lena Lamont. She will secretly re-record, sync all of Lena's dialogue.
Donald O'Connor comes up with the idea and has Debbie Reynolds stand beside him and sing while he and say things while he mouths it. And Gene Kelly's incredibly slow to catch on to what Donald O'Connor's idea could possibly be.
Don't you dare go after the Good Morning scene. I will fight you, sir.
The Good Morning song, other than Singin' in the Rain, is the best song.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the whole thing. That whole sequence in the mansion. Don't you dare, sir. I will end you.
What do you mean? What are you getting at here? It's like, oh man, are you kidding?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so they do it. They actually pull it off. Almost. And then Lena finds out about it.
Yeah, it's all hinging upon that Lena will never know Debbie Reynolds is working on the movie.
Right. But she does. She finds out about it. And she finds out what's even worse is that Kathy Selden, Debbie Reynolds' character, is going to get screen credit for her voice, which means that Lena will not.
Yeah, and everybody will know it's not Lena's voice.
Yep. And so she sees this, and I think fairly, as a threat to her career. Yeah. So she uses her big star power basically to round up all of the gossip columnists, feed them an alternative media narrative where she is going to debut as this amazing musical and vocal talent, and then she uses that press to strong-arm the studio boss into agreeing to make Kathy Selden continue to be her voice without credit, so her career can continue on for a few more years, because Kathy Selden's got a 5-year contract.
Which is kind of strong on Lamont's part, because, yeah, you're right, it totally would have ruined her career.
Yeah, and she points out, the thing I love about that scene is when she's in the studio boss's office, basically strong-arming him, is she is a big star. People do go to her movies just because she's in the the movies, and all of this press is already out there.
Yes.
To undercut her now would be devastating to the studio, and she knows it. She's put them in a position where they have to do what she wants, or so she thinks. And then we get to the climax where the movie premiere goes off in front of a packed crowd. It's a rousing success, and right at the cap of everything, Lena undoes herself.
Yes.
By saying, everyone, up until this point, all of the public speeches have been given by Gene Kelly's character. And Gene Hagen, with her shrill voice,
for all of their movies,
is like, no, tonight is my night. I'm gonna be the one doing all the talking. And she goes out, and she goes into her voice, which of course is
not the voice in the movie.
Not the voice in the movie, and everyone is very confused, and they basically ask her to sing. She runs off screen. They engineer a sync sound thing where Kathy Selden will be on a microphone behind the curtain, and this gives Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor and the studio boss the opportunity to literally raise the curtain, or I guess part the curtain, on this illusion.
And Debbie Reynolds incredibly gracious to do this.
Well, she has to. She has a You've got a 5-year contract, honey. You don't have a choice. Yeah. But then she runs off the stage in embarrassment, and I will stop at this point to add that after this point, Lena is never seen again.
No.
She just completely disappears from the movie. So Gene Kelly basically apologizes to her, which rekindles their relationship, which this whole situation with Lena has threatened to sever. They sing one last musical number. They end with a shot of the two of them standing in front of the billboard advertising their next movie together, Don Lockwood and Kathy Selden, and then they kiss. The end. Fade out.
You're talking about the Broadway melody sequence. So the plot of their movie, the Dancing Cavalier, is that it's going to be about a Broadway actor who is in a production of
The Tale of Two Cities.
Tale of Two Cities, and he gets hit on the head and knocked out, and go back into the old Dueling Cavalier movie now, but with its new sequences added and things cut as basically a fantasy that is the entire movie.
Yes, it's his dream. It's his coma dream. Yes.
And so this Broadway melody number is they go to the studio and had RF, and they're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And he's like, all right, well, so what about the beginning of the movie with this Broadway part? And then Gene Kelly's like, well, what I have in mind is, and we go into a blank screen, and now the Broadway melody part we see is a fantasia of what's in Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor's mind. And it's so bad. And the song is not that memorable, and I don't know.
As a dance number, as a story, it's amazing.
But the song it ruins the movie. And then they come back to real life, and the studio head says, you know what, I don't see it. And they're like, no, when it's actually in the movie, it'll be great. And I was like,
and he's like, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, no, the studio head was right. It was terrible. They should never have done it.
Every gem has a flaw.
The
flaw of Singin' in the Rain is that gigantic sequence which kills the momentum of the entire movie, which up to that point has been like really moving along at a very brisk pace.
For as much as a movie that just stops so people can sing and dance.
It's a musical.
Yeah.
What you want. But anyway, so why would that's Singin' in the Rain. That's Singin' in the Rain in a nutshell. Why would I pair this with Babylon? As I was watching Babylon, I noticed the many little nods to Singin' in the Rain. They literally at one point in the beginning of this is Manny's golden age, this is the beginning of his studio executive career age. He's literally working with someone who's wearing the exact French Revolution gown that Lena Lamont is wearing in Singin' in the Rain, and she has a line of dialogue about Pierre, and I'm like, okay movie, I see you. I know you know your cinema. I know, and there were several other nods like that. The I love you nod that we've talked about a couple of times. There were several big nods, not the least of which, of course, is the massive Singin' in the Rain number, which is quoted. And I'm like, okay, I know that a lot of directors do this. This is Damien Chazelle naming his sources. This is the movie director's equivalent of citing your inspiration.
Yeah, it's classy.
Right. And it wasn't the only one I noticed. I noticed there with Gloria Swanson and with the couple of there was a scene shot on the upper deck of those old writers' offices, the studio writers' offices at Paramount. That's a Sunset Boulevard pole.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously a Sunset Boulevard pole. I think I noticed a couple of little...
Yeah, we didn't bring up Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
We kind of did.
We kind of did. And that's okay. I can talk about Sunset Boulevard for a long time,
that would have been an interesting double feature choice, too.
I thought about it. I thought about it at first, but what pushed it over the edge for me was when Manny walks into the theater at the end of the movie. And this was where I was prepared to walk out of the movie and say, Babylon, I hate you, and I never want to see you again, because I thought this is so lazy. This is so lazy that you're doing this. You were literally showing us what you pulled from before. But I already, and I know a lot of the audiences that are going to go see Babylon, a lot of them probably haven't seen Singin' in the Rain, which turned 70 this year. But I was like, this is lazy, I don't like it. And then I stopped to think about it. And like, Don Lockwood is Jack Conrad. He's the musical version of Jack Conrad. Don Lockwood's story is the story that Jack Conrad wanted to have. The story where he gets into the sound era and he is able to successfully reinvent himself and have a happy ending with a woman he loves. That's the story Jack Conrad wants. Lena Lamont's story is Nellie Leroy's story, only with Nellie, unlike with Lena, we actually get all the backstory with Nellie that we don't get with Lena. The backstory that in Singin' in the Rain is given to Don, which makes her a much more sympathetic character than Lena is. Lena is a joke. Lena is explicitly written as a joke. She is written as a shrill-voiced harpy who is way too full of herself and who will go way too far to protect her own reputation and power.
Yeah, in fact, in Singin' in the Rain, it's obvious that the voice of what's-her-face is not going to go over. But in Babylon, it isn't inconceivable that the Jersey thing could work.
No, and it kind of like in the college role, especially, that could have, like, if the dialogue had been better, if Nellie had been able to give a more natural performance, you know, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with the whole "I love you" line that Jack Conrad delivers. There's nothing wrong with that. There's something wrong with it if you repeat it over and over again a dozen times, like Gene Kelly does in Singin' in the Rain. But it's not a bad line. Just saying "I love you" is not a bad line. What I started to think of is...
Yeah, it's not incredibly clear that they couldn't have made it as actors. And
it's not.
In Babylon, when the thing, we've kind of left out that what makes Brad Pitt finally kill himself isn't that he can't make it in the movies, it's that he will no longer be allowed to be in good movies, or movies he's proud of.
Yeah.
He thinks he'll only be in these crap movies.
Yes.
Or very mediocre movies, and his love of the form and his opinion of himself and what he wants to be won't allow him to continue.
Yeah, it's one of the kind of the most quietly desperate scenes in the movie where he's talking to Irving Thalberg on the phone. He's like, I just want you to be honest with me.
Yeah.
This movie is going to be garbage, and I am going to be saving you by being in it, right?
But when we see him act in the movie,
I
thought he was pretty good in the movie, better than the guy he was acting with, and I started thinking, like, why is Jack Conrad going to be limited to bad movies from now on? Why can't he have a comeback and be in good sound movies? That was kind of a thing that didn't work for. I was like, wait, is he doomed to be in bad movies, actually?
Eleanor St. John, I think, kind of covered that, though. It's like the audience has moved on from you. You are not going to be the big star anymore. And it's not...
What about...
And she even says, do you want to know why it happened? Do you want to know what the reason is? There's no reason. It's just, they're done.
Yeah, but she says that. But does that make it true? What about, like, later on you bring, like, Don Amici or Melvin Douglas or somebody, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
but for,
you actually can have a second act in life.
You actually can, but for every one of those silent stars who transitioned over...
Buster Keaton did not work out.
Yeah, and again, with Buster, there's no reason why not. His voice is fine. It's not unpleasant to... he did sound films, a few sound films later.
Yeah.
His voice is not unpleasant to listen to. He never lost his touch for comedy. It's just that the movies had moved on from what he did, and he never got anything like the star power he had when he was doing stuff like The General or Steamboat Bill Jr.
No.
You know, so I felt for that. But, like, as I was watching that last scene, and as I got over just my shock and disgust at the audacity of deliberately pulling from the movie that you've already deliberately quoted from multiple times, I'm like, no, wait, I think I get what he's doing. In this universe, of course, Babylon, everything what we've seen is real. These are real people. They really lived 20 years ago. And they really had these lives, and now their lives have been mined and turned into this confection
of what is popular in this day.
Yeah, and it's a musical theater version of the story of Hollywood, but it's a musical theater version that I think Manny would like to actually be true, even though none of it is. It's the movie where Jack Conrad actually got to be a star in sound as well as on the silent screen.
Not Lily Lamont.
And not that part.
Yeah.
But it's a part where he himself gets to be the fix-it man who has all the big ideas.
There's no
who
Faye
ends
or
up,
Sidney.
Yeah, there's no Faye or Sidney because it's 1952. You notice that there aren't very many performers of color in Singin' in the Rain
No,
either.
that's
There's
what my
one.
point is.
There is one. It is Rita Moreno.
Oh yes, Rita Moreno was in the movie.
Yeah, Zelda. That's what you got. You got Zelda, and that's it.
Rita Moreno from 80 for Brady, which we saw a trailer for before. One of the weakest batches of trailers before a movie.
It was really sad, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then we move into this film montage, and I started to kind of tie all this stuff together. The speech that Eleanor gives to Jack in her office. It's like, your time in the spotlight is done, but you're always going to be alive in the sense that what you made in this town is still going to be. And there's a certain logic to that. Like, if you go into Hollywood, you yourself, not just the stuff that you do. The stuff that you do might live, but you yourself will eventually be mined if you reach any level of notoriety. You will be mined. You will be caricatured.
Yes.
You will become part of the stuff that gets ground down and put onto the screen and repurposed for other people. And there's a lot of tragedy in that, but there's also a lot of beauty in it because, at least I think this is Giselle's perspective, because you were important enough to enough people that even if they pull you and turn you into this caricature like Lena Lamont being made out of Nellie Leroy, that you mattered enough to make fun of. You mattered enough to be a villain of the piece. And it kind of recontextualized Nellie's disappearance for me, which, it seemed abrupt at the time that she just literally walks off into the darkness in the street. But she's Lena Lamont. How else is she going to go out? She's just going to walk off the movie and she's never going to be seen again. And, that's it for her. That's it. She's done.
But we did get the newspaper article.
We did get the newspaper article, but we never see her again. We see those clips later on, but we never see her again.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's that neat of a tie-up in Giselle's mind.
Maybe it's not. It worked for me, I'll say that much.
But I will also say I would have been disappointed had we never heard what happened to Margot Robbie. I felt like that crime thing and the marriage thing, you never think they're going to end up together.
No, it's pretty obvious that they will not.
It's pretty obvious that she's not going to leave and that something's going to... And that leads to me saying that, well, I 100% understand where you're coming from with this double feature idea. It makes total sense, and as a person who had not seen Singin' in the Rain, it was interesting to have the two movies inform each other. I've got to say, thumbs down to your recommendation of a double feature.
Okay.
Because Babylon, you've talked about movies that are of a long length that don't feel that long. Babylon feels too long. I loved the movie Babylon, but I would say it felt like 4 hours, not 3, even though it was pretty breathless.
You could find a half hour to cut in there. You really could. It moved quickly, but you could feel the weight. I'm not going to disagree with you about that.
And so to pair it with a 50s musical that, by your own admission, may be 10 minutes too long.
It is 10 minutes too long. I will cop to that.
And I would argue is about 90 minutes too long.
Oh, boo. Boo, sir.
Okay. I would definitely, if I was going to accept your double feature, I would put Sing in the Rain second.
Okay.
Not first.
Okay, well, let me defend that choice, because I promised I would. But I do want to finish on on this montage thing, because it got me thinking about the movies like Chazelle basically stealing Singin' in the Rain to put it in the end of his movie as this is the Hollywood confection version of the story we just watched, and this is what all of the movies will eventually do to all of the great stars and the great players. We'll always just steal and repurpose and grind back into pulp, but every so often we'll achieve something great. We'll achieve something transcendent. And right as I'm thinking that, they start going into that montage of clips from other movies, which I was ready for at that point specifically. I think I'd just gotten done thinking about how Tom Holland is going to be Fred Astaire in a biopic of Fred, which would just kill Fred Astaire. He never wanted to be on screen. I think Tom Holland will do it just about as well as anybody could. Not looking forward to it. But if you're going to go in the movies, like, that's the bargain you make, is if you get success, you're going to be there. And then we watch this ridiculous montage, and I use ridiculous in a positive sense, of all of these different movies. And then we cut back to Manny, and he's smiling.
Ridiculous
and
isn't
like,
worthy of ridicule?
What? No. Ridiculous is in ridiculously perfect. I'm going to defend the montage. And then we cut back to Manny, and he cracks that little bit of a smile, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where I am too, Manny. That's kind of where I am too. So this is what I would love to do, actually, is to take someone I knew who had never seen Singin' in the Rain before and who had no idea what Babylon was about, and watch Singin' in the Rain with them, and then take them to the theater. And just have fun with this old Hollywood musical that's a bona fide classic, and then watch them notice the quotes in Babylon and start to feel smarter than the movie, and then reach the end. And I want to know whether they would have that same reaction that I did to the closing use of Singin' in the Rain, followed by the montage. Maybe 1 or 2 in 10 people will, if you follow my recommendation. Maybe 1 or 2 in 10 people will feel that way, and everyone else will probably go out saying it was uber pretentious, and that's okay too. Not trying to tell anybody what to like, but I loved it. That's my defense.
I did like the colors in Singin' in the Rain, like that old Technicolor magic. Yeah. I love the bright colors in those movies, the turquoises and things. To me, that was gorgeous. I love that kind of thing, and the purples, and it was really pretty. And I also think the dancing by Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor was quite good, and a couple of the songs were good, and the movie had a couple of laughs. But just my appreciation for dance numbers is so limited. Just get me to sit through a ballet, it's got to be like the music that I just like cannot stand not listening to. I'm way more of an opera. If you're like, you want to go to the ballet or the opera, I want to go to the one where the people have a story as they move along with it. Like, it's like, I don't know, my appreciation for dance is not the greatest.
Okay, fair enough.
Even though I appreciate the skill. If you want, my kind of dance movie is a Jackie Chan film.
Well, he is very balletic.
Yeah,
there's no question about it.
I like seeing the way dancers and the martial artists can do things with their body that blow my mind, but I just don't want to see it done at length.
Well, I do. I'm a musicals fan, and Singin' in the Rain is one of the greats, and you should watch it with Babylon. At least say I, but you give thumbs down to me. So, I
give a thumbs down to Singin' in the Rain, as a mild thumbs down.
Okay.
And I give a thumbs down to the double feature, a mild thumbs down.
Okay, that's fair.
It's just too long. But before I talk about my much better idea...
here we go. Okay.
I'm going to need another beer.
All right, let's do it.
It's time for Maniac, filmed on location in hell.
You didn't even mention suicides.
Somebody sober up the day players.
This is as close to sex with a woman as either of these guys has ever gotten.
Well, doctors and scientists often have some queer things in their minds.
Such as sex.
Before I tell you the movie I did select, I want to talk about a couple movies at least I did not select. In the same way that you thought of Sunset Boulevard, which it did not occur to me as an idea, I thought of a couple of other movies about what I thought was the same period in Hollywood and kind of Hollywood decadence and turmoil movies. First was Day of the Locust, based on Nathaniel West's novel, and I decided against it pretty fast because because I just think that movie's a drag and didn't feel like watching it again at the time and didn't feel like recommending it to people. I need to rewatch it. Maybe I'll feel differently now, but it just seemed like a drag.
I have never seen Day of the Locust, although I have actually read the novel. It was assigned reading for a college class.
I liked the novel.
Yeah, the novel was something else. I did like it.
The novel is short.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very easy... You might read the novel as a pairing with the movie Babylon.
I could see that, actually.
Then the novel I did not read, I mentioned Last Tycoon, which I thought would be a better choice because I like Elia Kazan's movie of Last Tycoon, and it's very different from the movie Babylon in style in that it's more of a quiet, meditative film and Babylon's very blustery and rambunctious. And I decided against them both because Babylon is 3 hours plus long, and I felt that that had to be taken into account when trying to select the perfect double feature, is that I didn't want to pick a long movie.
Sure.
And I didn't want to pick a movie too similar, but that was less than... I just thought that almost any movie would be too long. Now, I did actually do a double feature that was not the movie I'm going to pick. Just on happenstance, after watching Babylon, I hanged out with my father, and we watched the movie. He had not seen it. A movie I know you love, The Counselor. Kind of a Brad Pitt double feature. Okay. I know you do not like The Counselor, as no one does but me. And I thought it kind of was a good double feature because The Counselor is such a talky, quiet movie in its own way, even though it has bursts of crazy violence. It's not a similar film in style at all to Babylon also. However, the movie I did select was the Rifftrax version of the movie Maniac.
Yes.
Also known as Sex Maniac, a public domain film now from 1934.
This is true.
That is about mental illness and crimes, and I chose it because it was made before the code. And oftentimes when I watch pre-code movies, like we talked about Dracula, I really can't tell what they couldn't do, like what they could do, what they were permitted to do, rather, before the code that they couldn't do afterwards. Like I just can't even tell if there was any difference. But with Maniac, you can see things that you would never see in a movie like Singin' in the Rain.
Well, with Universal, I mean, with all of those old monster movies, just the fact that it was a horror movie was already kind of pushing the bounds, and that it was a big budget horror movie, and they had their investments to protect, right? Which is why they went out of their way. This is based off real literature. This has a real good stage actor in the title role. You gotta give it a chance. Give it a chance. But I agree with you. It's they come off as very creaky and stodgy in many cases, not all. But they do come across as very respectable.
Yes, the respectability is what I'm referring to. Whereas Maniac is a rated R movie. It has actual female nudity, bared boobs in multiple scenes, and it has abuse of a cat. And a fake graphic popping out of a cat's eye.
Yes.
And also on top of this, Maniac is, I think, under an hour long, or about an hour.
It is. I have the time here. Hold on, let me find it. 51 minutes. 51 minutes and 1 second in the version that we watched for this. Which, you said Singin' in the Rain was 90 minutes too long. I'm going to say Maniac is 2 hours too long. Even with the Rifftrax.
See, my feeling was that without Rifftrax, Maniac would be unwatchable.
With Rifftrax, it's barely watchable.
If you're not familiar with Rifftrax, there was a television program, one of my favorites, called Mystery Science Theater 3000. They invented something that has been done since. They invented watching a movie and making fun of it as a show.
Yes.
And the cast members changed throughout the run of the show, and the people that were on the show at the end of the run, after the show was over, have continually tried to bring this back in various guises. They had another show that they had a season of that got canceled, or something called Cinematic Titanic. That was exactly the same idea. They make fun of old movies. Then after this, they started their own business independent on the internet, wherein they do commentary tracks to movies that sometimes, like, you can get one to Avatar. They do big movies now, but they still do the public domain movies like they would do on Mystery Science Theater, and they do one for this movie Maniac, and I find it quite hilarious. I loved it. I watched it twice. So you say it was 2 hours too long. I watched it twice in 2 nights.
That is with the
Rifftrax.
That is with the Rifftrax.
I would not watch this without it.
Oh no! Oh, absolutely! I get together a couple times a year with some friends in Dallas, and we watch movies that are very much like Maniac. At least some of them are very much like Maniac, and we do that. If you're actively participating in the ridicule of what you're watching, it can be tolerable. If you're just kind of passively listening to other people ridicule it, it is somewhat less tolerable. But I am with you that the version of Maniac without the Rifftrax cannot possibly be worth checking out for longer than 30 seconds at a time.
I would like to at least go into slightly the plot of Maniac.
Yes, let's do the plot of Maniac.
So Maniac is the story of a mad scientist and his assistant, who is a former unsuccessful actor, vaudeville impressionist.
Yes.
Who's now a mad scientist's assistant, and the mad scientist is a Dr. Frankenstein type who wants to steal bodies from the morgue and reanimate them.
No, Matt. He's not Dr. Frankenstein. He's Dr. Meyer-Schultz.
Yes.
It's a totally different vibe.
Yes. And he has a beard and glasses and such. They go to the morgue with the vaudeville impressionist made up as the town coroner, and they steal a body, and then somehow their experiment doesn't totally work, and this mad scientist gets the idea that his assistant should shoot himself and it'll be fine because the mad scientist will then bring him back to life. And this is where we get into the maniac portion. Who is not the mad scientist, is not the maniac.
No.
The mad scientist is the assistant, and we get title cards like in a silent film that explain to us various psychoses and their side effects and how easily they will be to spot in someone we might know in life.
Yes.
And how rare or common these are.
Which is the thin fig leaf.
Educational
Yes,
film.
it's the thin fig leaf of educational content on top of what is an excuse to show mad scientists reanimating corpses and women without their clothes on.
Yes. And so this plea to kill himself by his boss sets off the mania, the first of many various manias in the assistant, who then takes the gun and rather than kill himself, kills his boss.
This was the most sensible decision any character made.
Yes,
in the movie.
the least insane thing.
I am not going to, and this is the thing that's supposed to mark him as the maniac.
Yes.
I'm like, you hand me a gun and tell me to kill myself because you're going to bring me back to life. I would have done the same thing.
But then, after he kills his boss, he decides the smartest thing is no one will miss him, the assistant, the former actor. He's a loser.
Yeah.
So what he should do is take up the life of his boss and use his impression skills and costuming skills to live life as his murdered boss.
It is a flawless plan.
And what happens is, people come around and a woman comes with her husband who wants help, and he takes, it doesn't matter. And what does matter is that he has a neighbor who comes snooping around who's missing his cat, or one of his cats, which is now living in the doctor's office.
One of his many cats.
And the neighbor's job, who is not a maniac, is a normal guy. The neighbor is making a career of raising cats to kill them and take their fur and sell it. He's a cat fur salesman.
That's right. He will catch rats and feed them to his cats. And then he will feed the cats.
After he skins
them, he will feed them to the rats. And then he will feed those rats to the cats now that they're full of cat. I think this is like some sort of bizarre...
Which becomes its own Gene Kelly musical number briefly. Where him being like, we feed the cats to the rats and the rats to the cats.
I think this is some kind of really bizarre, like, I don't even know how to describe it. What was that Russian scientist who...
Pavlov?
No, not Pavlov. No, the guy who thought that genetic traits were, you could...
the phrenology guy?
No, I don't think he was a phrenologist. Like, that genetic traits and genetic deformity, or not genetic traits, but like things that were done to a parent could like be passed down to a child. I'm forgetting the scientist. It seemed very much like that kind of a theory. Like, if I feed the cats to the rats and then the rats back to the cats, I'll create a super cat or something like that.
His scheme was just incredible cost effectiveness.
One with even more lovely fur that I can skin and sell, and I'll just keep improving it with every generation.
And was it ever made clear whether he sells people the cat fur knowing it's cat fur, or if he's pretending it's a different kind of fur when he sells it?
I didn't get anything like that. I really hope he's just pretending it's some new species of mink.
Yeah, that's what I thought initially, and then as he continued to explain the plan, I was like, oh, no, I think he might just be selling people cat fur as cat fur. What happens next is that apparently the assistant, somebody would miss him. His long estranged wife, who left him because she thinks he's a loser, she now lives with a group of scantily clad women in some kind of boarding house situation, or some kind of roommate situation where like 5 women live together. One of them has a newspaper and finds out that a mad scientist's assistant, former vaudeville actor, has inherited a lot of money from a rich aunt. And somehow she decides that she's going to go back, like your estranged dad, once you became a famous golfer, comes back into your life and wants some of this money. She's going to get in on her husband's riches. Mm-hmm. And it even seems clear that she knows somehow he doesn't know he's inherited the money.
Yes.
Which, I don't know how she comes to this conclusion. Her husband, I guess, can't read newspapers or get documents.
Well, she can't wear clothes, so it's all... Yeah. There you go. By the way, I was not thinking of anyone Russian. Apparently, I was thinking of Lamarck, who was French, and who I probably misdescribed. So you should all just forget about that.
Yeah. But not the super cat.
But not the super cat, because that would be amazingly terrible.
Yeah. So at any rate, she comes back into the picture. He decides, I think, to reanimate his boss, who's been interring as a corpse, like the cask of Amontillado in a wall in this basement they work out of, I believe. And then the police show up and bust him.
Well, you're forgetting what he did to her husband, right? Yeah. No. Let's go back.
Yeah. Please go back and explain this.
Let's talk about the Buckleys.
Yes.
So we can't.
Which gets us a lot of William F. Buckley jokes on the Rifftrax.
Mustn't forget the Buckleys. Apparently, Dr. Meyer-Schultz, the not crazy, not mad scientist, has been seeing patients as part of his work. He's seeing this guy named Buckley for, I don't really remember for some condition that he has.
Which is apparent that he has a condition.
Just
not what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, though, because what ends up happening is that Don Maxwell, do I remember this right?
Is that the
not Dr. Meyer-Schultz. Yes, the vaudeville guy. He injects Buckley, I think, with the same formula, with Meyer-Schultz's reanimation formula that is supposed to reanimate, and instead it causes Buckley to have like a Jeff Goldblum moment over the entirety of The Fly.
Yes.
And then die. And this puts out his wife, Mrs. Buckley, who is being played, great naming, by the way, Mrs. Buckley, who is being played by Phyllis Diller.
Yes.
Not
the Phyllis Diller.
Anyone who just got their hopes up, get them right back down again. Yeah. Not that, believe me, for
who
just a second.
Who would have been great in that role, by the way. The real Phyllis Diller would have been an excellent Mrs. Buckley.
Yes, the real Phyllis Diller would have been in this movie with the real Dr. Meyer-Schultz, and it would have been a much better movie as a consequence. Yeah, she gets a little put out with her husband, basically dying, and she strong-arms Meyer Schultz into doing what she wants. Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah, and it seems like there's another thing where in some way, maybe she finds
she does find out that he's not really who he says he is.
Or does she find out that he's not who he says he is? She discovers the dead body, and he says it's his assistant.
That may have happened.
Yes. He says that the vaudeville guy is dead on the ground, not Dr. Meyer Schultz, and he's the real Dr. Meyer Schultz. And this dead body that looks like Dr. Meyer Schultz, maybe he shaved him to get his costume, and shaved, he looks like Don Maxwell,
yes,
not Don Lockwood.
Not Don Lockwood at all. And it is, if anyone just missed that, the important thing to note is that Dr. Meyer Schultz, the good Dr. Meyer Schultz, who was a little overbearing as a boss and a little crazy, and wants his assistants to kill themselves, but otherwise really was not all that bad a guy for the first 8 minutes of the movie that he was in.
For a grave robber.
Is lying on the floor of his lab, dead, because Don Maxwell couldn't be bothered to move the body.
Yes.
Or hide it. Not even to the extent of sticking it in a closet or under a sofa or propping it up Weekend at Bernie's style. No, it's just on the floor. Why is it on the floor, Don?
He convinces her, though, that it's the assistant. They get the idea maybe to reanimate both Mr. Buckley and the assistant with this bringing back to life scheme of Dr. Meyer Schultz, and that once brought back to life, they will be mindless slaves to them.
Yes.
And she likes
and
the idea.
Mrs. Buckley loves the idea of being the boss of her husband.
Yes. Yeah. And that's how they become in league. And then somehow this leads to a huge fight between the vaudeville assistant's wife and her at the climax of the film.
Yes. And I have no idea why.
But at some point we do get Mr. Buckley carrying a naked woman in his zombie state across like a field. Tie back into Babylon, we get many problems with film production or just the awkwardness of not understanding the medium of film throughout this. Where in multiple movies, much like in Singin' in the Rain, feel cut together. We get long stretches where they just didn't bother to have any recorded sound.
Yes. Which gave the Rifftrax guys some great opportunities. Yeah, which, and that's the reason you recommended the Rifftrax version specifically was them making all of the jokes about the characters. Like with any Rifftrax track, and I don't mean to slag these guys off, a lot of them don't land. A lot of the jokes.
The same was true with Mystery Science Theater. You're really going for the few jewels in each episode, or you hope will be in each episode.
But it's also, it's very, in terms of just like verbal comedy, I would compare it a lot to a Zucker-Abraham Zucker thing, where if you don't like this joke, don't worry, another one will be along in 10 to 15 seconds.
Yes.
And there's the whole, like, Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist, has this theory that if he can just make 1 out of every 5 strips funny, then he will be forgiven for the other 4. So all he needs is a 20% hit rate. And that's about what this Rifftrax had for me, was about a 20%
hit rate. That's really pretty good.
It is pretty good. They did a pretty good job.
And I think that's one of the inherent, when you talk about making fun of a movie, riffing on a movie with your friends versus watching people riffing on a movie, I think that you nail something here, which is if you're watching a bad movie and you can't think of a riff, you don't have to talk. But these guys, since they're selling you material, they have to talk through the whole movie. There isn't any kind of, they just let this go and run for a while and nobody talks. So yeah, it is a Zucker-Abrams Zucker constant jokes kind of thing.
Yes.
Which is the difference in doing it on your own.
Yeah, and enough of them land that it's a satisfying experience.
I'm glad you thought so.
Oh, but I still am giving a thumbs down to the
Nice. I like it.
I am. I have to, because it's just the experience of listening to the MST3K guys go off on Maniac in the abstract was a satisfying experience. I'm not going to take back back what I said. But it does not make up for having to watch Maniac. Which is, when you said you wanted me to watch Maniac, I was like, ooh, I haven't seen that for a few years.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yeah, the classic 1980.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I love Maniac. I have no idea what connections he's going to draw with Babylon, but I'm going to have a good time watching this again. And then you were like...
With Joseph Spinell?
Everybody loves Joe Spinell.
I was just watching some Cruising with Joe Spinell, as I love to watch Cruising every day.
So yeah, I'm giving a thumbs down to Maniac,
and my double feature.
It's a hard thumbs down to Maniac. It's actually kind of a thumb sideways to the Rifftrax version of Maniac, which as I said earlier, at 51 minutes only feels about 2 hours too long. But it's a mild thumbs down to the pairing, although I see what you were going for. I do see what you were going for.
Yeah, you're out of there in 4 hours.
And that is an advantage. But I have never been one to shy away from sitting down and watching a couple good movies.
And I guess that my thumbs down was mostly based on that I didn't really like Singin' in the Rain.
And that's fair. That's fair. You're wrong, but...
Yeah. But similarly to the fact that you don't think it was worth having seen Maniac, I do think it was worth having seen a cinema classic that I never saw.
Well, I'm glad I could at least do that.
Yeah, that is one of the classic films people have been enjoying for 50, 70 years.
Yeah, 70 years old. You know, I showed it to my students a few years ago, actually, and they were...
How did they feel?
Not fans.
Yeah, they were probably like me.
Not fans. It's, but then again, these are the kids who got bored by Star Wars. The original Star Wars, the non-special edition version of Star Wars bored them.
Wow.
So, take that for
that doesn't blow my mind. I do think that it may be an easier sell to a modern audience, Star Wars, than Singin' in the Rain.
Oh, it certainly is. But they were bored pretty much equally by both. Final verdict on Babylon.
I think if you're a person who loves the movies and you go see movies not just for... If you like cinema, more or less, if you're a person who's got to see every Martin Scorsese movie, or if you're a person who likes to see a lot of movies, then I think Babylon's a must-see. I think it reminded me of, in a way, of There Will Be Blood, where its reach exceeds its grasp, but whereas There Will Be Blood landed more in the solid range with things I didn't like in the movie and things I did. I do like There Will Be Blood. I think I prefer, at least after one viewing, Babylon, because parts of Babylon were so spectacular to me. I thought that they were as good as anything I'd ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's not a perfect film.
No.
It's not... I don't even think I would be comfortable calling it a great film.
I'm not sure, but I think I might call it a great film.
Maybe it'll
I'm not sure.
Well, greatness is something we'll see in 20 years.
This is a point I didn't bring up earlier. A movie it was reminding me of, aside from something like There Will Be Blood, like, okay, this is good, but it not totally successful, is the movie City of God. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen City of God?
I have not.
Okay.
But I'm familiar with this.
City of God is a movie where the first time I saw it, I was like, oh man, this is great. The lead character is a little boring and a little vacuous, but it has all this fun side stuff and all this great filmmaking. This is a great movie. And now, here we are. It's City of God's at least 15 years old at this point. I don't care much to ever see it again.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's going to be the same thing with Babylon. But right now, I would watch Babylon again right now.
I would too. I would go again to the theater and see it. It is,
yeah, I would consider it too, which I think I did with City of God.
It is a film, like a capital F film. And, it's not a perfect film, but that's okay. I've seen The Northman this year. I've seen Tar this year. I've seen 2 perfect movies this year, so that we've got a film here whose reach does exceed its grasp, but it reaches so high and it still delivers so much just viscerally in terms of sheer spectacle. That party sequence at the beginning of the film, as initially off-put as I was by it, and there are still some parts of it that put me off, I have been unable to stop thinking about that since we've seen it, because there's just so... It's like the perfect image of Hollywood. It's so much.
If you just want to see a bacchanal pedophilia decadence on screen. It makes Eyes Wide Shut look like Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Let me get a little poetic here for a second. That's the whole thing about, like, Babylon, not in terms of the Hollywood connection, but in terms of, like, the religious and the historical. It's a place that promises wealth and youth and power and sex and fame and glory and immortality, and it doesn't deliver. It never can deliver, really, on any of that. But it does seem to sometimes for a time. It might make this the perfect title for this movie.
Oh, it was a perfect title for the movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect title.
But yeah, I'm with you. Thumbs mostly up, not completely all the way. Appreciated the ambition.
Yeah, I couldn't give it 4 out of 4 stars, but I'll definitely see the movie again, and I'm recommending it to people as well.
Yeah, I would be selective in who I recommended it to, though.
Me too.
Like,
I wouldn't tell my dad to go see it, or my mom.
Yeah, this is not a parent's film. This is definitely not a kid's film.
It depends on who your parents are. And who your kids are.
I suppose so.
If they're under 3, they'll love it.
The unfortunate thing from my perspective is within the career trajectory of Damien Chazelle, which I have seen Whiplash, and I liked Whiplash. It was a very actory, stagey sort of film, but Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons deliver. The whole movie is built around those two characters, and they really play off each other very, very well. You can see why Whiplash got nominated for so many things. And I was a fan of La La Land, although a qualified fan, as kind of Damien Chazelle's homage to the Technicolor musical. I thought it was great. But La La Land, Whiplash was made so cheaply that it made money, and it got nominated for a bunch of stuff anyway, and that always brings in the award season crowd. And La La Land did make a decent amount of coin. This movie will not. No. It is an $80 million movie that I think has pulled in 4 on opening weekend. It will flop and flop hard. I don't really like that.
No, it makes me sad. Talking to a mutual friend of ours, Josh, and he's seen. I lied when I said you're the only person I know that's seen the movie. He's seen it.
And what does he think about it?
I think he was kind of down on it and thought it was pretentious and stuff. But then when I was talking about it, turns out he liked the same parts we did. And in the end, he texted me. He's like, you know what? While I was watching it, I have to admit, I felt good watching the movie, just being happy something like this is being made in 2022. Mm-hmm. So in the end, in spite of his curmudgeonly ways, I think he kind of liked the movie. And I was like, yeah, there's something so like that very bravura, like I said, visceral, like the fast moving, we're gonna not be meditative with this movie and make it, we're going big and going hard. It's like an Oliver Stone movie or something. It doesn't ape the Oliver Stone movies at all, really, but in a way it's kind of like an Oliver Stone movie where it hits hard, it's kind of over the top, but I like it. I like to see somebody do a lot.
Yeah, and it was a lot.
And there's some of it is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. I'd rather see, it's not a total success, but it's not a total failure.
No way.
It's not even mostly a failure. But even if it were more of a failure than a success, I'd still rather see an ambitious flop than another $150 million, $200 million cookie cutter, movie that's meant to please everybody, but I'll forget it like 5 seconds after I left the theaters. I'll be thinking about this one for a while.
The Damien Chazelle thing, some of the mastery of the medium in this movie reminds me of something like in the movie Boogie Nights when Don Cheadle's in the donut shop, and it's a total ape of like the way Scorsese or someone would do this scene, but the tension, the sound, the cinematography, the beats, the pacing of the scene is just, you're like, no, this guy totally understands how to make a good movie scene. Damien Chazelle has mastered that in this movie. It's like just about any scene, like when they go into that tunnel and stuff, just the where to put the camera, pacing, how to make it like a tension, build tension, all of that is on a master level.
Yeah,
I thought this was a much better movie than Boogie Nights.
Mm-hmm. But
I think a lot of people will disagree.
But Boogie Nights had Luis Guzman in it.
True.
Yeah.
So. This has Diego Calva.
So
who was quite good in the movie.
He was great. I was about to
still kind of prefer Lou Guzman.
I was about to make a Community joke. But the people who may be listening to this may have already made that one for themselves, and that's fine. No, Diego Calva ends up he goes from being Manuel Labor to being the handy Manny to being the fix-it Manny.
Yes.
And at the end in the theater, he's a stand-in for the common Manny. The movie wouldn't succeed to any degree without him being there to give the movie a little bit of a grounding.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think that I have more, I guess, mixed feelings about his character in that he is the lead, and I guess if he would have gotten killed or something, I would have been a little disappointed. I don't know. Really, the heart of the movie is Brad Pitt as the supporting character. It's another movie where the lead character is not as strong. I'll be kind of shocked if Brad Pitt isn't nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and I'll be more shocked if Diego Calva is nominated for Best Actor.
No, I think that's fair. The story would not hang together without him.
No, but Calva's great in the movie.
Yeah, he would not.
His performance is great.
He's the reason that the movie functions. Brad Pitt is the reason that the movie has a heart. So, how do we wrap this thing up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. So, until next time, I'm Mason.
And I'm Matt.
And we'll come up with a cool catchphrase for next time.
For double feature.